Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast presented by the Consequence Podcast Network. I'm Michael Rothman, editor-in-chief and president of Consequence of Sound, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Randall Colburn, the rockin' one,
and Mackenzie Gerber.
Now, you can hear us pretty well, right? I think so. That's
Yes.
because we're recording from a studio here in Chicago, Illinois. That wasn't always the case, though. When we started this podcast, we were actually huddled around an old Yeti microphone in Mac's apartment that he doesn't even live in anymore.
That's right.
And there were not 4 or 3 of us, there were like 6 or 7. So we wanted to go back to our older episodes and make sure that you, constant listener, actually have a good grasp on knowing that this is not how it's always going to sound. You know, it's a very rough quality, and we just happen to have that rough quality over Stephen King's most iconic books. So
Yeah, it's rough. But I'd say, for Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Rage, and The Stand, I believe.
Night Shift, too.
And
Night Shift.
Yeah.
We recorded those episodes in a very sort of primitive way, doing our best. That was before we got our studio, which makes us sound so lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll notice that the audio quality is going to be a little bit not up to par, but I'd say the content of the conversations are still very, very good. I'm very proud of the analysis we did. You'll notice a few other changes too, like in these early episodes, we talk about everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we didn't now we stretch our legs a bit. We do separate episodes for the movies, for other things. And for here, we're basically like, let's talk about all the Stephen King news, as well as the book, as well as the films, as well as the plays, as well as everything. So these episodes run long. Well, I mean, a lot of ours do, but these run extra long because we're talking about those things. And you'll also notice that kind of the way that we break down our conversations now is a little bit different. We refine that over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll notice that it's a little bit rougher, but it's the same quality Losers Club content
And
that you've always wanted.
these episodes nearly killed us. The Night Shift episode, I got the flu because we recorded everything.
We
in one
recorded
day.
for 11 hours straight,
Yeah.
I think.
Two
Yeah.
episodes back to back covering all 20 stories?
All 20 stories
And the movies.
And the movies. It was exhausting. I think towards the end of the episode, I started fading away.
Dan started crying.
Dan started crying. I cried in the Shining episode, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, these episodes are special.
They're very good episodes.
They're very special episodes, but we did want to make sure that you didn't go into this podcast thinking that it's going to sound like this forever. Because obviously, as you could hear from us right now, that's just not the case.
Yeah, if you're just popping in to hear like, oh, I love Salem's Lot, I'm going to check out this new podcast. Why does it sound like they're recording underwater? You know, we just never really thought that. I think that, you know, we were testing things out. We were seeing if anybody would even care if we did this podcast. And luckily, a lot of you guys did care, and you listened and supported us and followed us on social media. And so we were able to, you know, beef up the sound, make things sound better, expand our lineup, and refine the way that we do things as it is now. So.
Because so much has changed since 2017, not only with us, but the whole world at large. And you're going to hear about all of it as you're journeying through each one of these episodes.
And now we'll let you venture into King's Dominion in your biohazard suit with Stephen King's The Stand.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome once more to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast from Consequence of Sound. Today's episode finds us journeying from various parts of the eastern U.S. to make our way towards Hemingford home, and ultimately, for most of us, Boulder, Colorado, as we cover Book 2 of Stephen King's The Stand, complete and
Uncut. Filthy.
Thank you very much.
I actually take offense because I think I would actually end up in Vegas. And
Well,
I don't think there's
that's
anything
why
wrong with that.
I want to make
so
a point to say most of us will not.
God, are you a
end up there.
Slytherin?
I am definitely Slytherin.
Cool.
I love. I'm an Alan Rickman fan. I
Some
have
of
to be
my
Slytherin.
favorite people are Slytherin.
I've heard Draco Malfoy, but Draco Rothman? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Hey, the first Jew at Hogwarts.
I'll let you make all those comments.
Yeah.
We're good to go here. But thanks, everybody, once again for the great interaction we keep having with you on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. whether it's through your own personal post, through messages. We love it when you send these out to us. We try to get back to everybody as often as we possibly can. We're trying to build a nice little community here, much like the fine folks in the Free Zone are trying to do in Boulder.
God, you're a regular Randall.
I'm ready to
Flagg.
go. I feel like I'm living up to Randall's standards right now. Not Randall Flagg, Randall Colburn, who's not here with us today, but will hopefully be back for the next episode.
The walking dude is over in Michigan right now.
He is with his walking wife.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, sure. They're both walking. Again, we're covering book 2. So if you've not listened to our previous Standcast, please make sure to do that. Unless you're dying to get to information about the kid, 108-year-old woman, bowel movements, and Stu's confusion when it comes to lesbians.
That's true.
But we will be covering all of that in this episode. But before we get started, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. I am Justin Gerber, a senior writer at Consequence of Sound, and in front of me is
Allison Shoemaker, also a senior writer at Consequence of Sound.
And Allison. Again, this is your first go through. With the Stand.
Yeah.
Have you finished it, or are you still?
Oh, I'm now just started book 3.
This is exciting.
Yeah, so it's happening in real time.
This is great. This is like I'm sure there are many listeners out there either rereading or reading for the first time, and
You know what's
Allison is
fun
on your page.
So far, it's been, you guys will be like, oh no, you'll love Larry eventually. And I'm like, nah. 15 minutes later, fast forwarding, I'm like, oh no, they were totally right.
We were like
love
spoiler
Larry.
free, but wait, just keep reading. So it's a long one, so he comes around eventually.
does.
And also in front of me as well, but a little more to my personal west, my true west, my little brother, Mackenzie Gerber. Mac, hello.
Hi. I'm Mackenzie Gerber, also with Consequence of Sound, and this is also my first time reading The Stand.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. This is very important to point out to a lot of listeners. It's very important. Mac has read all of the Dark Tower books,
That's right.
but he has not read any other Stephen King books, so he's coming to all these books as a newbie. I mean, he's seen most of the movies, but we want to really illustrate the
I've
point.
seen a ton of the movies, and obviously the Stand miniseries was one of the first things that got me into it, but I have not read any of the other novels outside of The Dark Tower.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have our own little division here in the room. Those that have read it multiple times.
Yeah, true.
And those that are new. So
Oh,
new and
that's
old.
right. That's
New
I
and
like-
old.
It's good to have fresh takes, fresh opinions, and
Fresh meat, as it were.
fresh meat, sweet treats, and fresh meat. So I guess if you guys and girls want to get to it, let's.
Well, we skipped the man.
What did we skip here?
Well, this voice over here is Michael Rothman.
Well, you kind of said that you had
Editor-
read. Oh, you didn't give your introduction.
I did
That's
not
fine.
give an it's
Randall,
okay.
come back to us. No, go ahead, Mike, please.
Yeah, my name is Michael Rothman. I'm the editor in chief of Consequence of Sound, and also the stuttering one in the group, but not Stuttering Bill. So we can continue and keep going down this road towards either Boulder or my favorite place, Sin City. Actually, I hate Las Vegas, so this is purely a joke. I've only been there once, and it was all right.
Well, we won't be getting to Vegas too much in book 2. I think
No.
there's maybe a chapter here or there.
Unfortunately.
Very much unfortunately, as we will discuss
Yes.
upcoming. But even though we're on book 2, you figure we don't have to talk about any particular hooks because the hook of the book should just be one big hook. But as Mike has discovered, I'm sure as some of you discovered, book 2, in terms of the structure alone, is much different from book 1. And Mike has a couple words to say about a different hook.
Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it exactly.
Well, I think book 1 is all table setting. We see where the virus is going to go, Captain Trips, and we kind of see who the characters are, at least the principals. And we still didn't get to meet a lot of the actual corollary characters that were going to become very fruitful and important as this story goes forward. But one thing that King really doubles down on in book 2 is the religious aspects of this.
Yes.
And you get to see the inherent morality in everyone, specifically in 3 characters. You see them all, but really get to see kind of the tortured soul aspect of Harold Lauder and Needing Cross and Larry Underwood also. And I think that's, it was kind of hinted at that this path was already hinted just at the tail end of book 1. specifically with like Nick Andros' dream, where you kind of see he's seeing Mother Abigail, but then he's also being haunted by Randall Flagg, and you see this kind of hinted at with all the other principal characters, but it really comes into the foreground with when you actually see Nick experience this. And it's also interesting seeing it coming from Nick, since he's deaf and dumb. And I think that's, you know, the crux of this book is really in book 2. And you really kind of see just how they kind of split the characters, and I think a lot of them are pretty predictable. I mean, I don't know. I mean, was anyone
in terms of their split?
Yeah, or like where they were going. I mean, I mean, you two have been reading this. This is the first time. Were you surprised by any of the character transitions in terms of what their choices were, like good or bad?
Well, to me, yes, I sort of got the sense of where they were all going, but I wouldn't use the word predictable. I would use the word inevitable.
Okay.
Like, it feels like there's that great passage where Larry is talking about the guitarist for Sparks who came through the other side, and he's realized that he's come through the other side, but parts of this remain, parts of his previous self, this not very nice guy, remain. Mm-hmm. And it seems kind of like at this point they've all been through a trial. Like every time we get to, and that was how they met X, Y, and Z, that person has been through a trial, and either you come through it with some respect for humanity left, or a new respect for humanity, or you don't, which doesn't mean there's not still an internal war. But not all that long after meeting Nadine, I was like, oh, bad news.
Yeah.
Really bad news.
Yeah. Like, I don't really think... I mean, I think the trajectory is important for every character, especially in book 2. But I think it's more of a way, and I think it's coincidental, or not very coincidental actually, that Glenn Bateman is a huge figurehead in book 2, because he gets to be King's way of kind of channeling the thesis.
He's the philosophical
conduit.
One.
And,
oh yeah,
and this. Oh yeah, you go.
No, but Glenn, and I'll talk about this in book 3. But yeah, Glenn becomes like, you know, if Stephen King was in there, and it's like almost like the narrator a little bit,
yeah.
Let me lay it out for you here, and then, you know, tells you the whole story. But it's great. I mean, I love Glenn. I love Glenn.
Well, I only mentioned Glenn just because I think that this is the book where King really starts kind of sinking his teeth into the themes and like what he's trying to say. I mean, I think there's commentary on I think there's an overall commentary on American life by choosing like a small town in Nebraska versus like the kind of sleazy Sin City. And I mean, even the way he describes Las Vegas kind of points to that fact that, you know, King really is trying to embellish the evils of America and then the good aspects of America, like what really kind of were the foundations of America, like a small town life, like good people working together for the common good versus, you know, bad people coming in for their own vices. And I think those are like kind of the split dichotomy. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think he's really trying to comment on like the idea of religion and like why we're here, like who we are, like what paths do we take in this sort of like vessel of our own body. And, you know, for me, I've always believed and I've always argued that I think every war goes back to religion. I really do. I think that you can tie pretty much every war that's ever happened back to the religion, because I mean, it becomes a matter of who's right and who's wrong. And, you know, you get that when there's that whole theological debate with the committee, these themes come to life. Like, I mean, and, you know, I have some problems with Franny's character where they take her, but she actually adds this really great debate in that committee where she calls into question their own idea of attacking Flagg, saying, well, who are we to say that we're right and who's wrong? Like, we're just falling back into our own vices of, not on vices, but just our own ways of we have to attack this because this is bad. And, you know, and I think that for me, like that kind of summarizes the whole point of book 2. You know?
Yeah. I mean, again, like the good versus evil aspect, I think it's obviously really comes to its true form in book 3. It really begins to be addressed here. And now that the apocalypse is I guess behind us, we're now living in a post-apocalyptic world. Where do we go from here?
And he acknowledges religion.
A big theme, and religion is prevalent throughout, especially because of the major introduction of Mother Abigail, and even we'll talk about how Nick is still, despite everything he's seen and heard. Well, not really heard, but you know what I mean by that.
Experience.
Experience. There you go. Thank you, Allison.
Heard in the dream.
Well, I
But
think,
my issue, we'll get more into this too, is there's too much of a focus on the good.
yeah, I
And
agree.
I don't think that makes for a compelling narrative continuously.
Yeah, I mean, I
There's
think
a balance that's lost.
I mean, the fact that he's, King is blatantly going out and saying that this is a religious war. Like, I mean, and there's even that comment where he says if it hadn't been Captain Trips, it would have been something else that would have taken down the world. So clearly, it wasn't just this commentary on man-made destruction. Like, this was supposed to happen. Like, the end of the world was supposed to happen. This is supposed to be a fight between God and the devil, and that changes the game. Like, book 1, you could still make the case that it's not really a religious book. No. Book 2 kind of flips the script on that, and I think that is something to kind of keep in mind when we're discussing that today, just because that was to me a little jarring, because at some point it does actually kind of feel like we're reading what's the difference between this and Left Behind? Like, obviously there's the difference in writing is much
Yes.
better, much
That's
better.
We can
For
talk
what?
about Left Behind a little bit too, because I remember when I started reading Left Behind. Shout out to Left Behind and Tim LaFay, or whatever that con man's name is. Because
Yikes.
the first Left Behind book, has anybody ever read the Left Behind novels?
No.
No, I
Okay,
have
this is
not.
very important. This is very interesting too. The first book is actually quite good. It's literally about, it's kind of like what The Leftovers is about. One day, everybody a lot of people disappear and they're presumed to have gone off to heaven, and then the sinners, however great a sinner you are, is left behind on earth. Strangely good first novel. And then by the second novel, you notice every 5 pages, they would talk about how somebody has come along and found God and has been saved. And then by the time you get to book 3, it's every 3 pages where they talk about how important it is to be saved by God. And then you realize, this is all just one big, it's the long con to make you either feel guilty or to force you to convert, and it's garbage.
So it's an advertisement for the Catholic Church.
I can't speak on the Catholic Church. I'll let Mike, who went to Catholic school, speak on that.
Yeah.
But the thing with this book is, yes, granted, it's obviously about good and evil, and religion, especially in book 2, like Mike said, comes into this quite a big deal, quite a bit, but it does not succumb to the depths that the Left Behind series succumbs to.
Right. I think it's extremely layered, and even characters like you were saying, like with Nick, they don't 100% come around to, like, I believe in God, I believe in the devil. They're still even though they're in the free zone and they're in that, pretty much a great person, not everybody, it's not black and white for them, and it's still very muddied. And, I also kind of like how all the people that are really great at technology apparently are in like Vegas, like there are the ones like getting everything back on track and getting the missiles ready and all that stuff. I always thought that was interesting that some of the more tech heavy people were apparently just happened to be in Vegas more so. And they kind of make a comment about that. I don't know why.
I mean, that's a little bit of a twist too. You figure that the easy way to go about this would be like all the depraved, lazy losers are going to go to Vegas, and then all like the really smart and up and coming people are going to go to Boulder, and that's, as we learned, is not the case at all.
That's a little book 3 preview for you.
Yeah.
Love book 3.
Teaser alert. We do eventually get to some more interesting aspects of the story.
But
we get back to it.
But what's interesting to me is that there are characters, like he at least acknowledges that there are characters that don't really want to become part of this holy war. Like they don't want to believe it's a holy war.
Yeah, right.
Like there's that there's a great section with the judge and Larry when they're like kind of sitting there on the porch, and one of the actual rare moments that you kind of really get in touch with the judge, because I feel like he's kind of he's a good supporting character, but I still feel he's kind of underwritten. But the judge and Larry are talking about the disappearance of Mother Abigail, and I think this piece right here really kind of says a lot about us as society, and like maybe how King views modern society in general with regards to religion. And I think this is what also kind of separates this from, say, like Left Behind. The judge says, "Perhaps one of the reasons I'm almost glad to have her gone is because I'm such a rational old curmudgeon. I like to creep through my daily round, to water my garden. Did you see the way I've brought the begonias back? I'm quite proud of that. To read my books, to write my notes from my own book about the plague. I like to do all those things and then have a glass of wine at bedtime and fall asleep with an untroubled mind. Yes, None of us want to see portents and omens, no matter how much we like our ghost stories and the spooky films. None of us want to really see a star in the east or a pillar of fire by night. We want peace and rationality and routine. If we have to see God in the black face of an old woman, it's bound to remind us that there is a devil for every God, and our devil may be closer than we like to think. And for me, that kind of stuck with me because going to Catholic school and being in a family that really doesn't believe in religion, but I have a Jewish father, and that whole culture has always been ingrained in me. And even looking at me like a spokesman for the Jewish, like Jewish groups or whatever. But it was always confusing to me of being like, well, what is real? Like, or, clearly I was introduced to the idea that there are multiple religions early on. So I've always wondered, like, well, if they believe this and someone else believes this too, then somebody has to be right. And maybe there is a higher power out there. And what if you're wrong? And that whole complicated matter made me just say, I don't want to believe in any of it. And I admit that. I fully admit that. Although, and as a kid I did. And now we look at science and philosophy and all the universe, and we realize a lot of it is speculative fiction at the best. But I think that feeling of not wanting there to be a God because there is a devil, and not wanting there to be a heaven because there is a hell, and having that risk of, if you don't get in that, you are going to be in here. And I think there's a fear to that. And I think could be one reason why a lot of people actually do end up rejecting religion.
The black and white of it all.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of scary. And that for me, like in book 2, that sort of rejection and acceptance of what Glenn calls the white magic, because like they're like, well, we've gone through all the science. It's now spiritualism, and you could be with it or against it, but it's real and it's happening. Like that's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that a lot of the people in the town, like the judge is even saying right then, like he's happy to just do his daily routine. He doesn't really want to think too much about Mother Abigail being this prophet or the voice of God, because then he has to think that maybe it's real and maybe there is this bad man across the way. So it's almost like, even the people that have seen all these things, had these dreams, had these experiences, have actually themselves had these experiences, are still denying it, are still trying to deny it, because it means they have to actually believe in something.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. But again, it's super layered, and it's not preachy.
No.
To the point where you're like, oh, I get it. We need to be good. They don't ever go that far, I feel. I mean, to me.
No.
Well, we'll talk about this too, but some people's fates are kind of predestined, which is the cruel aspect of a predetermined religion, I guess, or the narrative. And
I will definitely talk about that, but I think that's kind of a problem with I have with book 2 also. Yeah. Because there is a lot of layers and nuance, but I do feel, and you kind of hinted at this before, that there is like a lack of for the other side, and which is something I feel like book 1 did better. But I mean, I think that's for the next section.
The next section, Mike. Do you mean the structure and format?
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Well, we kind of already tackled some of the themes like religion already, so I guess we can just get right to the structure aspect of the book. And if you look at the first book, the chapters are quite short, ranging between 5 to maybe 20, 25 pages at most. I mean, there's a couple longer ones, but for the most part, they're pretty short chapters. With book 2, especially the first 4 or 5 chapters, they're almost short stories at that point. Yeah. I mean, we really stick with these characters for a lot of pages. Do you feel that worked better, or do you feel that it was a little jarring and you liked the pacing of book 1? I open the floor to the three of you.
I felt like I was fine with it because, for certain characters, because there were some people where you'd get into it and you'd want to stick with them, like Stu and Glenn, and I liked sticking around with them for a while and really getting into the meat of things. But there were other sections where I was just like, okay, let's go. Like even Larry, I love Larry, but like all the stuff with Joe and Nadine, and it was interesting to me, but I was like rearing to get back to some of these other characters.
Joe is.
I missed the shorthand chapters, but you kind of needed it to go there.
I personally did not like the longer chapters. I thought that they gave longer chapters to characters that I just didn't really feel were that compelling. Like, I mean, I feel like, the way that he wrote Mother Abigail, first off, is a lot of weird things that they go off on with Mother Abigail. But I don't know if I needed nearly 30 pages of walking back and forth between a farm. And I just didn't really find it that compelling to me. I think that even like a lot of the history that he goes back on with her was very, granted they capture like some interesting aspects of her background, but for the most part, it just totally killed the action for me, where it was just like all of a sudden we're like, okay, we're going to stop here and we're going to go back 100 years ago almost. And it was like, oh, well, I'm going to be doing this for the next 60 pages. Like, I mean, that's a 60-page chapter that's in there.
Yeah, and maybe Allison might agree with me, but having only seen the miniseries and not having seen it for a while and reading this, I didn't mind that because there's a whole backstory with her that you don't get in that miniseries, and I thought it was really interesting. It slows down for a minute, but I don't know. What did you think about that?
I'm sort of in between. It felt I had the experience reading this that I had the first time that I read Les Miserables, the uncut version.
Oh,
yeah,
that has the kid in it, right?
Well,
hope not.
When you're reading that, you get to this section, like 2/3 of the way through, where we spend an insane amount of time, just insane, on battlefields for a long since fought war, long ago, right? And it's just because we see the character Thénardier and he's robbing corpses, and it's backstory, interesting backstory, but oh my God, I just kept going and going and going, and then I had to just stop and walk away from the book for a while because it was like going on a hike and I've finally gotten dehydrated and now I need to sit under a tree and drink water and think about something else before I start hiking again. And I don't love it when reading starts to feel like a chore, but at the same time, I'm really glad I had all that information. So I guess I'm somewhere in the middle.
And again, you have not even seen the miniseries for
no,
Stan Allison,
nope,
correct?
This story
this
is
is
brand
totally
new to me.
fresh to you.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think for me,
My knowledge of the miniseries is that Gary Sinise was in it. End of list.
which is enough reason to see it. Gary Sinise is great. Actually.
I can't wait to see it. I'm excited.
It's good in my opinion. It still holds up. There's some dated problems, obviously. We'll talk about that in our fourth Stand episode, which will be covering the miniseries adaptation
And the comics.
and the comics.
And we'll be casting our own new Stand.
Oh, I have thoughts.
Yeah, it'll be a little more modern, we believe. The Mother Abigail chapter for me, having seen the miniseries a million times, in which honestly they kind of dilute that character to the magical Negro stereotype.
Yeah, and that was my problem in the book still, though.
Well, I think that doesn't happen for me in the book because this isn't like Bagger Vance showing up on the greens. Now we have the 108-year-old history of this, essentially this normal African-American woman who they literally talk about her. She shits like everybody else. They talk about that.
That's enough.
She
of that.
struggles to go to another farm to kill chickens just to get by. She has had children who have died before her. She's been married several times. She sings at parties and is surprisingly accepted. She has her own fears and doubts, and the movie kind of has it where she's always known this is going to happen in a way, and she's always been God's vessel. But in the book, they say like it wasn't until 2 years before the plague starts, right, where she finally gets that. So I feel like for me, granted, don't get me wrong, Mike. I agree with you that they could have cut out 30 pages. Of the
Yeah,
chapter.
that was my point. It's not that I don't. It's not that I'm uninterested with her history. It was more along the lines of like, did you need to spend this much time to go into it? I felt like it could have been a little tighter to the point where it just, because we've read short stories of his. I mean, in Night Shift alone, where we get a good history. I mean, look at even Jerusalem's Lot. Like, he's able to knock out a pretty good history within a short span. And with her, I just felt that there was so much like this focus on a lot of mundanities that didn't really add up to me for some,
Yeah, I think that I appreciated all the history and backstory because it does show you that she is a human at the end of the day.
I like that.
And which explains a lot about her character and why she, treks off and stuff. But I do feel like they probably could have done it in a split up way. They could have cut in there and we could have seen Larry for a little while and then come back to her. And I think it would have helped push things along a little bit more. But, when King starts writing, it's hard for him to stop.
As Doubleday tried to stop him from writing by eliminating all those pages.
That's
but,
true.
When you get popular, do whatever you want to do, Uncle Stevie.
I mean, I guess my problem with all of book 2, and it kind of ties into Abigail's chapter, is it's just overwriting, and it's there's some overwriting in here where you could even tell he almost doesn't even trust the readers sometimes, where he has to just kind of describes this entire visual metaphor, and then at the end of it will explain the visual metaphor, and it's just like, wait, what are you doing? And I guarantee if you would have cut some of that out, you would knock out at least like 30 pages in this book.
It feels like the Stephen King who was writing this book didn't realize that he was as good a writer as he is.
Yeah.
And so he just keeps making sure that his ideas are clear when they're already fucking clear.
Yeah.
Because I had a similar reaction, Mike, but part of what I kept thinking, as much as I was enjoying it and as much as I enjoyed book 1, I just kept thinking, oh, well, the book could have just opened here. Oh, well, the book could have just opened here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, well, the book could have just opened here. And when I started book 2 and there was that refrain every time they're meeting someone, it's like, God, this feels like the beginning of a book.
Yeah.
How interesting would it have been? And I wouldn't want him to lose any of this writing. But if the first scene in the book had been the gas station, and then we jumped to everybody's dead, and when we first meet Fran, she's digging the graves, and when we first meet Stu, he's breaking out of the center, and like all of those, that just would have been really scary, and I would have been so sad to lose the rest of the writing, but I don't know. It
to a
feels
point,
like,
I mean, you would have missed the epic scope, I guess, of it.
Oh, I would have missed the individual chapters.
Yes.
Like all those vignettes are so good, and yet, especially at the beginning of book 2, I kept thinking, wow, so this is actually the start of the book. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the crazy thing about, sorry, Matt, but the thing is, like those vignettes, for instance, they were cut out of the original version. And those are some of my favorite moments of the whole thing. And again, we have to think about the fact that he was heavily influenced by Lord of the Rings, which we discussed in our previous Stand episode. And I almost feel like I've got to make this long. I've got to stretch this out. You've got to feel the weight of it. But at what cost?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact of the point of view. I mean, he needs to. There's this weird struggle of how big do you go, and I feel like once he did those plague chapters, and then also once you get the government involved, your scope's pretty wide. And especially when you have a character like Randall Flagg, who's the Eye, which if you want to talk about Lord of the Rings,
that's another issue I have.
But it becomes a battle of how small do you go and how big do you go, and I could see the conflict at the typewriter for him of how is the scope going to impact how you relate to the characters, because is it better to not know as much as the readers, or as the characters, so that you can kind of feel their realizations and you can feel their horror also? Or is it better to know more than the characters so that you can kind of anticipate what's going to be going down the road for them? And I think that's always been, just based on the books that we've already read on this podcast, that's kind of been King's forte, is having you be 3 or 4 steps ahead of the characters. I mean, that's why he does those foreshadowing stingers.
Yeah, and I think that the main issue with this is he spends so much time trying to show us that just how easily we could go back and do the same exact things and make the same exact mistakes. but it's like 600 something. It's like
Yeah.
it's a ton of time, and it's a lot of town meetings. And I'm like, you could have done that in like one town meeting. Just showing like everybody just volatility, like having these conversations, and you're like, okay, yeah, we could easily just come back to like we're turning the power back on, we're doing this, and how long before we start going down the same route? He just over explains it. I feel it just goes on, and obviously like Doubleday, you guys were saying in the first episode, I was listening to it because I wasn't able to be there, trying to get them to cut it and this and that, and I don't know, maybe book 2 was a lot shorter in the uncut version. I mean, not the uncut, but the cut version. I'd be interested if any fans out there know if there were things that were added back in after the fact for book 2.
The kid, definitely, right?
The entire kid chapter is not in the original novel.
Well, another thing with the kid is that I didn't mind that chapter because we finally got away again from the free zone, because we just never go to Vegas for like the entire book 2, which I think is a huge problem, because they never really, you spend all this time with like Lloyd and some of these other people that end up in Vegas, and then we don't get to continue building their characters for like half the book. And I think it's a missed opportunity, because for something that isn't really trying to take a huge stance and saying things are black and white, they could have shown that, Lloyd and all these people that are in Vegas, maybe they're dealing with the same things and having the same grapples, and some of them maybe want to come over to Boulder and vice versa. And, you get a taste of that in book 3, but I really feel like had they littered book 2 with that, it would have been a little more interesting, I think, all the way through.
And it's also kind of problematic in the sense that the only point of view you get of Vegas is the most unreliable narrator in the entire book, and is Trash Can Man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the only person you get to see Vegas through, and he's crazy.
Yeah.
Like he's literally the craziest character in the book. I mean, when you really think, even over Flag, and I think that's weird. I mean, you have a character like Lloyd already that's in there, and so why wouldn't you use him to your advantage? I agree with you. I mean, and it's weird because the beginning of book 2 does feel like it's going to be oscillating back and forth between these two things, and all of a sudden they just get to Boulder, and you're like, oh, I guess Harold and Nadine's enough to show the evil point of view.
And it's not.
And it's not.
When I was thinking about my reactions and where I got sort of frustrated, and what other culturally is out there where I have a similar level of frustration and enjoyment, and there isn't anything where it's both. But I do think it's appropriate that Stephen King is one of the people left in the world who's still enjoying The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Because it feels
Yes.
a little bit like that. Like we're stuck with this group of people and they're stuck, but instead of exploring that situation with some sort of fresh perspective, there's a looming menace, and then it's constant turmoil, but not really. And it just really, and of course the characters here are much more finely drawn.
Mm-hmm.
The writing is better, but I was on his Twitter account when we were recording Needful Tweets earlier this week. It's like, oh yeah, so Stephen King is really still watching The Walking Dead?
Yeah, that's a
Stephen
good
King
point.
is one of the people still watching The Walking Dead, and it feels a little bit like this, only this is a lot better. But similar problems.
I just hopped off of Walking Dead because I thought this season was just fucking abysmal.
I'm proud to always, every episode I feel like I have to mention the fact that I jumped off at the beginning of season 2.
Okay.
I don't like The Walking Dead.
You gave up when Darabont was still involved, though. So
No, he was gone by the time episode 6 came
Hey,
along.
sometimes you need to turn your brain off. And King's, writing all these heavy books.
That's
You
true.
just got to go
Literally
watch
heavy.
something you just can check out.
I'd like to introduce you to all the other great TV that you can watch and turn your brain off for. There's lots of it.
Allison, can you give us an example of one of those shows?
Well, it's not The Handmaid's Tale. Can't turn your brain off when you're watching that.
No.
How about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? You could do that.
And that's on Netflix, I believe,
That
right
one's
now.
really wonderful. Yeah, both seasons are on Netflix. You could watch Designated Survivor, which is terrible, but it's a completely different kind of terrible.
Kiefer.
It's like an
Yeah,
earnest,
Kiefer.
terrible.
Yeah, except for now they've started ripping off The West Wing. You can watch The West Wing. Go
The
back
West-
and watch 7 seasons of The West Wing.
We're in the golden age of television, if you haven't heard already. So, trash television's at its peak, and so
There's
is
plenty.
Prestige.
You're the worst. You could. Oh, I know
Ooh,
you
You're the
already
Worst is
watched
Love
great.
You're the
everything.
Worst. Love you.
I
Yeah.
love FX. Anything with FX. If I only had to pick one network for the rest of the year, I think it would probably go to FX.
The
I
year.
think
That's
you know,
it.
I think
the
this,
year.
I think this decade belongs to FX
Yeah,
in terms of the
absolutely.
quality programming they've
Although
had.
you know what, of all networks, the CW is creeping, like slowly but surely.
They've got the comic book thing down. First of
They
all,
do,
Crazy
and all
Ex-Girlfriend.
those are getting better. They've got Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. They've got Jane the Virgin. It's like
How
slowly but
long before they bring back Buffy?
you know
I don't
what?
think they will.
The
don't
ending
think
of
so?
that series. The series itself should have ended. Hi everybody, this is the Stephen King podcast, by the way. But no, that should have ended probably season 5. But I think the last shot and sequence in Buffy the Vampire Slayer is as perfect an ending as a capper as you're going to get. And I do not think they ever have to bring that show back.
Well, Whedon's
don't-
working on a new show right now, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna. If
Yeah.
Joss Whedon was gonna find a network to help him bring a show back, it wouldn't be Buffy. It would be Firefly.
Yeah, that's
They'd
true.
find
actually.
a way to bring back Firefly.
Well, we might as well get back to the Stan book too, I guess. But
Yeah, I mean, if we are talking about structure, and I agree with you. Going back to the Walking Dead analysis,
The Walking Dead was how we started
know.
talking
Yeah,
about
that's right.
TV.
No.
The
boy.
Walking Dead is to blame for a lot of bad television and
And rants
and
on
tangents.
the podcast
Tangents.
here.
Yeah, my problem with is exactly that. Is that there is no real dichotomy in book 2, and once they get to Boulder, it just ends. Like it just is. You're stuck there. I got claustrophobic. Even.
Well, they try to make the main, thing that's going on is like the big mystery about Harold and like his intentions, and they try to make the driving force like Harold and Nadine, and like that's interesting enough to stay in Boulder, and like how are they going to mess things up? But it's just not, because like they've already made Harold Harold's a very interesting character, and I like that, but all Harold does and Nadine do remind me that we have like Lloyd, and we have these other characters that I'm way more interested in, and they just don't use them until later on.
See, I don't know. I disagree. I think Harold's the only thing that's interesting to me in book 2, because his struggle in book 2 is like the most nuanced thing. I would agree more on Nadine, because I feel like they rob her of any sort of choice. But
Well, yeah.
my thing, I agree with you in the sense though that like I don't think it should have been all he should have leaned all on them.
Well, no,
I think they're a good example of the struggle of being good and evil, but that's not enough. You still need the other side.
Yes, and I think again, I like their story, but they do too much. Like they drag it out.
Yeah.
They do the whole, maybe the ledger and all that stuff, and it's like a lot of to do, and we could have just skipped all that and just gotten right to it, and still had the same thing, because they still make all the same decisions. We did the whole thing where Larry and Franny are trying to look for the ledger.
Inspector
and all this.
Underwood.
Yeah, yeah, Inspector Underwood.
Well,
I just feel like, and that's something that they did cut, from the miniseries, but like in a good way.
Oh, you
but-
you mean you didn't want to have a perfunctory loose stone that literally every character is able to find?
That's the thing with book 2. I felt. I mean, listen. I know that Stu and Franny and Glenn and Harold and their group. I forgot the 2 people they met. One of them dies, and then the other person kills himself. That's obviously horrible. But I do feel, for the most part, once book 2 begins, there's just not a lot of issues that these people have to overcome. It just seems like everything kind of starts to come really easy for them on their way to Boulder in a lot of ways. I mean, we'll talk about the zoo, obviously.
yeah,
yeah.
that's in the cemetery
But-
for sure.
I just feel like the conflict and the uncertainty of what's going to happen to these people and how they're going to deal with it of book 1, that tension is gone for the most part in book 2, and especially when they get to the back end of book 2. Because like you said, once they get to Boulder, the suspense is gone, and now it's just a whole bunch of back padding and, hey, come over to my apartment or house for a beer. We'll get the sternos out and we'll have a little cookout. Like, well, this seems awfully easy now for these people.
Well,
and
and
it
that's
just
the-
didn't really make a lot. It didn't make for a compelling read for me at all in book 2. And it really, again, like I thought the short stories for the most part were still pretty interesting. But I'm telling you, those last 200, 300 pages in Boulder are just free zone meetings and ad hoc committees, and I don't care about that. I don't
Well,
care.
There's a character. If we're likening this to Lord of the Rings, there's a character in
Oh,
Lord of the
God.
Rings that Justin hates.
Ugh.
And you want to? What's his name, Justin?
Oh, is it Tom Bombadil?
Yes, Allison. Thank you
I would
very
liken
much.
it to Bombadil. I would liken it to that. it's like a stopping point. Like the best thing about this book, all the way through, is the sections of the journey, everyone's journey to Boulder, and then we pick up on another journey later on, which ultimately becomes extremely interesting again.
That's in book 3.
But when we hit Boulder, it just stops. And it's like when the group hits Bombadil, and then we
Thank
just
God.
like sitting there at Bombadil for.
Well, the problem Lord of the Rings have, I still not finished the Fellowship of the Ring, because about 100 pages in, we're talking to Tom Bombadil and his bumbling, foolish self balancing like cookies and tea on his head or whatever the hell he's doing over there for like 50, 60 pages.
You know,
I'm
normally
like, get me out of here.
I would never suggest an abridged version. In fact, there are 2 books where I think it's worth, if you're struggling, it's worth reading the abridged version. One is Les Miserables.
No, yes.
The other is The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
Because I actually like the Tom Bombadil section by itself, but whoo boy,
Oh yeah.
it really does. It's just like, it's like a tree
Well,
in the middle of the
in
road.
terms of the narrative for that, it's like, okay, we're in a real time crush here. You know, we've got to get rid of this ring. We got to get going. Oh, let's just talk to Tom Bombadil, who can also solve all your problems, but is afraid to leave the. I will. I could
Anyways,
talk
yeah.
for hours about my disdain for Tom Bombadil. I could do it, but I'm not going to.
Oh, there's going to be a riot in the comment
Oh,
section.
You know what? That's fine. Come at me, you Bombadil heads.
But you
I'm
know,
ready
it's
for it.
funny because, like, you know, you could say the same thing to Mother Abigail. I feel like a lot of people put her up on a pedestal and think that she's going to be the one to solve the problems, and then she, you know, doesn't leave.
But she's also the reason why everybody comes. She's the conduit. She is the reason why everybody comes.
Right.
Bombadil's just
Bombadil's
there to
not,
be
yeah.
like, oh, I'm such a fucking moron. Look at me.
Bombadil's a little bit more like the kid, just kind of shows up out of nowhere and then sticks around.
I mean,
for
it
a
says a
while.
lot that Peter Jackson still would not include Tom Bombadil, not only in the theatrical version,
That's
but in like
true.
the 3 or 4 hour versions.
Wait, he
still
really
in the room
didn't?
for Tom Bombadil. What?
He didn't.
Bombadil's not in
No,
any of the.
Bombadil's not.
of
Although
the-
I like
includes
to
everything.
daydream about who he would have cast.
Oh God! It would have been like what's his name? He plays he's been in everything. He's oh God! Now I feel like I'm an
For
idiot
just
right
a
now.
second, I thought you
How
were
about
going to
that?
say RuPaul, and I would be so on board.
RuPaul. Hey, you know what?
RuPaul.
That would have been hey.
Are you thinking
RuPaul
Progressive Lord of the
Badal.
Rings.
Are you thinking
Like
of
it.
Jim Broadbent?
Jim Broadbent. There you go. That's a good example.
Yeah, that is a
that'd be
good
too.
example.
Somebody with like a real red nose, you know, that type of thing. Somebody who's there to just stop the story, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson.
Nah, he's
yeah.
maybe too tough.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We could. Now we're the fact that we're fantasy casting for
I know,
freaking Tom Bombadil is
Oh
disturbing enough.
God! Thank you, Paul.
Where were we, everybody? we were talking
still
about
in
the stand.
structure.
We were just
We're still in
chatting,
structure and format.
Yeah.
just chatting about how it just kind of stops. It slows down a little too much, and we spend a little bit too much time. And I think honestly, it's kind of purposeful because everybody starts getting a little complacent and a little bit like, okay, things are back to normal here. And they kind of,
Yeah.
and again, like that's why the judge mentions, and that's why Glenn and they talk about they don't want to come to terms with the fact that there is someone in the West that they need to worry about. Like they're just worrying about getting the power on and trying to create life as is. And even Mother Abigail has to bring it back around and be like, hey, like we still got to deal with this guy.
Well, I mean, they're enjoying their utopia, and I get the whole that they want everybody to seem comfortable.
Like
I
the
get that.
survivors in the prison.
Yeah, and I think that's my main problem with The Walking Dead as well. Bringing it back to that again, is that every time that show gets interesting and they start really pushing the envelope, they meet another group of people or that never experienced it before, and then we have to see them make all the same mistakes and the stupid things happen.
Oh, are they going to be trusting again? And
Yeah.
then is Rick going to make a terrible choice? Then is he going to be confronted by the reality of his actions?
Exactly, and I think
Fascinating.
learn from the Stan's mistake. Like, don't stick too long in this little utopia. Like, let's move forward, keep it going.
I mean, I won't get into spoilers, but there's a very easy solve to book 2. And you just bring forward some of the vaguest chapters of book 3 and put them into book 2. If you break it up a little bit more, if you just have a little bit more of the West in book 2, I feel like I don't know.
I wonder, you would all know, or you'd be more likely to know than me. Has anybody done like a suggested cut that brings forward chunks of book 3 into book 2?
There isn't, but there is someone that I always champion that does fan cuts all the time. Mr. Topher Grace. And
Topher,
if you're hearing this,
Grace.
I'm assuming that Topher listens,
Stan
just
needs
because
your help.
I'm
He
going to tweet him
definitely
all the time.
listens.
Yeah,
Well,
we've
what
talked
made
about
me-
Topher before.
What made me think of it is it's very easy to find a suggested reading order for, I forget which two, but two of the books in Song of Ice and Fire. And it's the two books where where Martin split the characters. So
That's
there's
the
like
fourth
the
book, I
Tyrion book,
believe.
right? And you spend one book without seeing any of Tyrion or Arya. And
Yes.
then one book with, and this is the way I think of it, because who wants to read a Game of Thrones book without either
those
Tyrion or
yeah.
Arya, right? And so you can go back and have the two books in front of you, and someone has worked out, read this chapter, this chapter, this chapter, then from this book, then from this book, then from this book, and it's a much more pleasurable read.
And it's an easy thing to do. It's literally just cut and paste. It's not like you have to say like, oh, halfway through chapter 63. No, it's chapter 63. We put it in here.
And I think that would help, because I do think the fact, to your point, I think it was Mac, that they get kind of complacent is really important. It's just
Yes.
not as entertaining a read, because both they and the book lose momentum, as opposed to just the group losing momentum.
The problem with that, though, is that, and because you haven't read it yet, you haven't gotten to book 3. I finished it now. There still isn't enough in book 3 to filter into book 2 without
isn't.
having nothing in Vegas in book 3. You know what I mean? Because there's not enough meat there. And I think the major disservice that I think that it does, and I'm like tearing this down, because I love the book, but I'm tearing it down because I think that it does a major disservice to, it's not black and white. Not every single human being in Vegas is this terrible human being.
No, they're not.
Like, no. There are some pretty awful people over there.
Obviously.
But they go out of their way to say, and you see some of that in book 3,
But-
that there are just like kind of normal people that, they just happen to be, probably sinners, and they, generally believed Flag had more going on than, I don't know. It's
Well,
not as cut and dry.
Well, you see some of that in the Trash Can Man, chapter, because he goes to Vegas and he talks about, he sees everyone at the diner and
Yeah.
they're all eating together. Again, unreliable narrator. But you do see some of them talking and they're chummy, and then you see the crucifixion. But it's almost as if just like King is saying, well, this is it. This is all that happens here. And I don't know. Did you have something that you...
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Mike, and this is Randall's favorite character, I think, or maybe even yours, Mike, in book 1 is Lloyd. And we spend so much time with Lloyd. And again, I think that whole section with his lawyer is totally superfluous, and
Yeah.
cut that out. We're spending so much time with Lloyd in book 1, and now all he is a side character for the Trash Can Man story in book 2. Why? Like, I don't understand why. Now, first of all, you've got a great, reliable bird's eye view into what's going on in Vegas, which is just look. I'm much more interested in the Vegas people at this point of the story when I'm reading it. Why isn't Lloyd in more of book 2? That's the question. I don't know.
Well, you have to ask. It's a simple question. I mean, how hard of a choice is it to, narratively speaking, how easy is it to say, are you good or are you bad? Yeah. For you to answer yes, I'm good. It's so much more interesting to say yes, I'm bad. Like in terms of writing wise, like to when somebody says yes, I'm bad, that's far more interesting than someone saying yes, I'm good. And we're seeing a lot of yes, I'm goods. And there's no, like, you see a few people that say, yes, I'm bad. And you just don't get that. Like, you get the evolution with Harold and Nadine. That's fine. But you don't know the you don't really get the ramifications of the bad and, like, what the kind of regret. Like, you kind of get glimpses of it. And,
And I think, and like Allison said, like, the inevitable thing about Harold and Nadine is that you pretty much know they're going to go bad. So there isn't, like, this, like, well, maybe they're going to be good. In book 2, you're not ever really thinking, well, maybe they'll come around. And they try to do that with Harold a little bit, but you pretty much know they're gonna go bad. So with characters like Lloyd, who are pretty much just bad, to see him have like faltering things, and I don't want to get into book 3 too much.
Yeah.
But to see that, it's more interesting to me to see someone that is already bad having some doubts. And you know what I mean? But again,
I think even structure and format wise, there are other problems in this book.
Yeah.
The whole Franny's diary thing is just absolutely ridiculous. Because, I mean, there's sections in there where, I mean, when they're talking about the Glenn's Staunton digression, and they're using he's using variables and percentages, and the idea that she's remembering all this. I mean, I can't remember people's phone numbers, let alone like, you know, a long 20-minute digression on philosophical politics of just like the percentages of survivors on a plane. Like, I mean, that's insane. And it's just it's very
Franny's
unbelievable.
got a memory like our own Dan Caffrey.
No joke.
Yeah,
but
right.
the thing is, if the whole book was just from the perspective of the person living it, if it was first person, that's one thing. You forgive those digressions. But the fact that we've built it up with King telling the story, and now we're reading Fran's diary for some reason. I don't even know why that was necessary. I guess it was a way to kind of speed up that chapter. But it's just such an unbelievability that she would memorize
Yeah.
all these long monologues. I mean, these are like page-worthy monologues that she's just remembering everything, like start to finish. I don't know.
I mean, it's
that,
one-
yeah, and that kind of took me out of it too.
I mean, it's one thing to have a recorded deposition, which I guess they do when they're doing meetings,
Yes.
like the meeting minutes, because I think they do mention that they're recording it. But when you do go into the diaries, this is too unrealistic, and also they kind of weaken her character in my opinion. We'll get into that in the Zeros and villains in a second, but just her voice in the diaries just felt a little too easy for me. But we'll go into that in a second. But there are other things that in terms of like overwriting that does work. Like I think that there's a section where Larry's talking about like the monkey house smell at the zoo. Mm-hmm. And how how when he went there with his mother, how he got used to the smell, and then when his mother acknowledged that there was a smell in the monkey house, he remembered it again, and it's a little short story. In that situation, it works because it adds a little bit more to his character. It doesn't feel like this kind of detour, but there's a lot of like clumsy overwriting that and a lot of like clumsy foreshadowing that just like it makes this a slog. I mean, it's like insufferable at some points. Like, and there's also a lot of just like awful and clumsy exchanges too. I mean, again, I'm not trying to rag on this book.
Well, it's
like crazy.
I mean, for me, it's easily the least of the three books in the stand, without question. For me.
I mean, look at this one. Here's one exchange that I was cracking up at. Ralph is there. The committee is talking all amongst each other, and Ralph goes, "I got no sympathy, none." Fran, come on, Ralph. Everybody knows alcoholism is a disease. Ralph, disease my ass. It's getting slappo. That's what it is. Stu, and you're both out of order. Come on, you two, pipe down. Like,
who cares?
Well, it's not even just. It's just like come on, Ralph. Everybody knows alcoholism is a disease. It's just it seems so like they're reading a script from an afternoon special or something. It's just like little. It's just ways to get the points across sometimes, or it's just I don't know. It relies way too much on overtelling and oversharing that I just got ridiculous. I mean, but again, there are some great stuff. I mean, I do love. I like the Kojak chapter.
Yeah, I really want to speak to that too, but Allison.
It's listening to you talk about that, Mike. It occurs to me that the most concise way I think to sum up that problem is that most writers who do shitty writing have the show don't tell problem, where they just tell. But Stephen King shows, and then he waits for a minute, and then he decides you haven't figured it out, and then he tells.
Yes.
He shows and tells.
And this is a 30-year-old. He was only 30 when he wrote this.
I know, that's insane. That makes me want to like choke on my own tongue.
And it's also one of
It's
those
nuts. He's so good.
Yeah, but it's also one of those things where, when we were reading Night Shift, a lot of those stories are like great, and then he like really explains the ending with like the black magic stuff.
Yeah,
and it's almost like he doesn't trust the audience is going to get it. He does, and maybe back then people weren't reading these things like we are now and having 5-hour podcasts and discussing it in depth. But
well, they definitely weren't doing podcasts.
That's very true. But I will say, like,
it was called radio.
If I was him and I was worried about people maybe they're not getting this, but this is after he's finished writing, The Shining and all these other books that have been received really well. So why he would think that that this needs to be spelled out, especially like if people aren't getting it, they're not going to continue to read the 1,400-page book either.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like they're going to get it and they're following it.
I mean, look at this. This is a section that goes right after Abigail has this horrific dream with like chickens and weasels and everything. It's on page 891 in the Anchor Books edition, which came out recently.
Mike loves the Anchor Books edition.
that
It's
has
the one
the-
with all the
Right,
dead
yeah.
people on
the
the
dead
road.
people on the road. That reminds me of World War II. He writes, but she was so terrified, not for the people around her, which were represented in her dream by the chickens in the sack, but
We got the representation.
like, I mean, like, it's like, what are you writing, a college English 101 page? You don't need to tell that. Like, we get it, you know? But whatever. But there is also a few dated references that I noticed that in here that continued, because I'd like to point that out.
Neil
in the section
Diamond-esque?
well, there's a mention of the recession on page 580. I don't remember any recession happening in the
Well, because
80s
in
and
the
90s.
70s
did.
would have been the whole gas
gas
crisis
crisis.
too. Yeah.
Which seemed like that was a carryover. The way that they mentioned the Who on page 657 seems as if they were still kind of like a new thing. And
Well, maybe they were just a big fan of the anniversary where Phil Collins joined in and Roger Daltrey wore that jean jacket. I remember watching HBO like, what the hell is going on here?
By the time 1990 rolled around, Eminence Front was pretty old at that point, and that was like their last big single. And then there's also mention about the judge being like around in practice during the 50s before he retired, and I feel like that was kind of a distance. 40 years is a long time to be
Maybe he's
retired.
90 in this,
Yeah,
driving
right.
around trying to get
maybe.
to, who knows?
But and again, I don't want to be too negative on this because it's Stephen King, and we love King. But there are some sections that I thought were really clever. Like I thought that the way he did the timestamps, like, oh, on this day, this is when Larry found Rita's dead body, and like this is what Trash is doing at this point. Like where you kind of get where you kind of get a good timeline of where everyone is. He does that a few times actually. In the beginning of some chapters, he'll let you know when this took place and give you a kind of reference for what a character was doing that you just read, so you knew like that this wasn't happening like days and days later. It was we're actually going back in time a little bit. So
Yeah, I
that
do
was
appreciate
all
that.
right.
Yeah, because I tend to, when I'm reading, I tend to be like, okay, this happened. Okay, now we're with these people, and that's what's happening next. And that's not always the case. Maybe this is happening before the events of this happened.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I know I do appreciate that because it kind of it fleshes out the world in a way that makes it a little bit more, 4D for me, I guess.
Did you guys have anything else to say about the structure or the themes or anything about book 2?
I just want to say, in case it isn't clear, that as hard as we just were on this book, that we all still really enjoyed it. Yes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't quite as page turny for me as book 1 was, but I'm just as excited to keep reading, and I still think it's very finely wrought. It's just,
And I think
there's some fat that could be trimmed.
there is definitely some fat. Doubleday, once again, had a pretty good point years ago when they were trying to edit this book down, and did for a little while. Well, I think Mike will agree that book 3 makes up for a lot of the problems
absolutely.
with book 2. So rest assured, the good is about to come back. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, and
a solid good is about to come back.
And to throw a bone again, I think there many bones. There are a lot of really gorgeous. There is a lot of gorgeous prose in book 2, and I mean I especially love how deep we get into Harold's mind. Like and that's I want to talk about him in
And what section is that, Mike?
Zeros and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
So we meet a lot of people, good and bad, in book 1. So you figure, okay, these are the people we're going to have the rest of the way. Not so fast, because there are quite a few people introduced in book 2 who are interesting, and some of them may be not so interesting. But we're going to talk about some of those new characters, but we're also going to talk about what specific characters are going through in book 2, and is it interesting? I don't know. Is it interesting?
Our favorites, our least favorites.
Yeah, exactly. So who wants to lead this one off? Anybody?
Oh, can I go into Julie Lowry? How about we get that?
Let's
out of the way?
get, which is I think the beginning of book 2 is
Yeah,
the Nick, Tom, and
okay.
Julie Lowry.
It is.
So
Yeah.
this will be part 1 of your rotating panel of female guests, who is just me's feminist variety hour.
The FVH.
Julie Lowry is a piece of shit, and I'm not talking about the character as a human, although she's also obviously a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Talking about the way that character is developed. I think that, and we'll talk about this more in this section, I think, but that King is such a good writer that he gets away with some kind of harmful tropes or stereotypes. And not in every case, as I'm also sure we'll talk about, but in this one, the like oversexed teenager who you can tell is bad because she's also kind of ugly, even though she's slutty. And and the misuse. So hell hath no fury like a woman scorned does not mean, oh, you won't sleep with me, I'm going to shoot a gun at you. That's absolutely not what that phrase means. And that character I was so angry I had to stop and step away for a while.
And of course, she's like the one who's trying to corrupt our young, courageous Nick
Yes.
Andros, or innocent Nick Andros, you know?
Which, by the way, who else was shocked that Andros actually sleeps with her, though?
Yeah, it seemed incredibly out of character.
Well, you
that
know,
was a little-
when Nick's looking in the mirror and he has like no teeth, and you know, I don't know why she was interested in him at this scene. It's
His eyes been
It's a
gouged.
nuts scene, and it's not believable
Does
on
this
any
happen
front.
in the miniseries?
There's in the
her
te-
introduction, but
Yeah.
not the pound cake.
Okay.
Exactly. He says no. They kind of keep him like, he's like, no, I don't think so.
No, there's
And,
probably a reason about that that we'll get into when we get in the adaptations.
with
With
that's
Rob
very good
Lowe,
point, with
but-
Rob Lowe and
yeah.
underage girls. We don't want to talk about that.
Oh,
right
yeah.
now.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Well, the character, in addition to being not very well written, although there are moments in that sequence that I think are very well done and deeply unsettling, her abruptly telling Tom that the Pepto-Bismol is poisonous is horrific. It's one of those like tiny injustices that make the world such a shitty and terrible
Yes.
place that someone would do something like that for their own amusement. So it's not that I don't think that there are moments in it that are good, but she seems to serve in this book basically no function other than to just paint the picture of an oversexed teenager who is awful. And
Yeah.
it just doesn't you know what? There are some teenage girls that have sex and it's fine. And granted, that's like Franny is young, but she's also got this sort of Madonna-like thing about her. And we're not all whores and moms. It's just really upsetting and bad writing. And I just don't buy that this woman young woman who's seen her whole town die would be like, what should I do with my free time? I know, I'm going to go try on perfume samples. Nope, no, not a thing, not a real thing.
I'll go to the underwear store, and you know, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
So it really, like, I feel like it's the root of the character. Do you think that character, if she was introduced in book one, let's say, and she was given as much space to grow as everybody else, do you think there's any salvation in that character if that was still like her makeup? Or do you think that the character itself was kind of just doomed from the beginning?
I don't think that having a character who's young, oversexed, not physically attractive isn't necessarily something that is shitty, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that she's not actually a character at this point.
She's just thrown
like
into
a
it.
sketch
Yeah.
of a bad person. But the only traits we know about her are the things that I just described. And that's not a character, that's a caricature. Only it's not
That's
funny.
a great point.
Right? So if we had spent book one with her and we'd seen her dealing with the death of everyone she knows and maybe interactions with her boyfriend, maybe some insight as to how she got this way, or if I'm thinking about now, East of Eden, there's a character that has a sort of similar feel, but that character is incredibly compelling because it's just as though something was wrong with her from the moment she was born, this tiny seed of darkness that just grows. And I think there's room for that in this book, only we don't get any of that.
And Steinbeck draws her out.
Yeah, and
tremendously
there's this
from the
sentence in
beginning.
there where he talks about her oddly sharp teeth that I've never forgotten. It's one of the best little descriptions, and you get a lot about who she is as a person from that, and I don't get anything about who Julie Lowry is as a
No.
person based on the description of her acne and her shorts that are almost underwear.
She's there to serve as conflict for this chapter.
Well, and
that's
maybe
it, you know?
maybe you would have gotten more from her if we would have switched over to the Vegas side a little bit.
That's
more.
right. That's a very good
Also,
point.
just a minor point, there is absolutely no way that a person goes to reach for someone's shoulders and gets their breasts by accident instead. That's,
that's a good
not
point.
real.
Unless you're like avoiding
Unless
a
they're
tackle.
jumping.
I mean,
Maybe if somebody went like, "Wah!"
Yeah.
and just like swung
Yeah.
their boobs in the general
How
direction
dare
of
you?
somebody's hands. No.
or dare you in this case? Unfortunately.
I'm guessing that my reaction was probably more extreme than any of yours, but
No, I thought
she just seemed like a underdeveloped character.
I hate throwing this word around all the time, but perfunctory
Yeah.
is the I use it so much. In every one of my film reviews, I try not to do it, but
Yeah.
it's such a perfect description for her. It's just like, oh, here's someone that's gonna push him out of town.
It
Like,
is,
you know.
and then also just having seen the miniseries before, like I knew the role she plays in the story, so I wasn't like, oh, I really want to get invested in this character. You know what I mean? 'Cause I know that she's kind of in and out, and then in and out later as well.
She serves.
So
She does serve.
She serves a purpose, but it's like, well, did you just throw her in there early
Just
to serve that
exactly.
purpose? You
But
know?
even-
So,
exactly.
yeah, so
But
it's-
even her purpose later on is so again. it goes
That
back
could have gone to
word.
somebody else.
Absolutely.
But we won't get into spoilers again. But I don't know if that character. Well, I'm pretty sure we all agree that character is not 100% necessary for The Stand. Book 1, Book 2, or Book 3.
Rejected, denied.
Sorry, Julie. Sorry, Steven. But you blew it. I'm gonna say.
Yeah, base.
Yeah, basic.
I know we're like jumping around here, but I don't want to.
Let's go to all the. Let's try to talk about as many characters as we can here.
I wanted to talk about Nadine because we've talked about Harold a lot.
Yeah.
But Nadine is one of those characters that I feel like they flesh her out, but I wish they spent as much time on her as they did with Harold.
I agree.
Because when they do go into her backstory a little bit with like the Ouija board scene, and which we'll talk about later. But I just feel like that is so creepy, and the fact that she's one of the only characters, and maybe I'm wrong, but she's one of the only characters that Flag and this evil has had her number from a very young age.
And that's an issue that Dan and Randall are here right now. I know Dan, for instance, really has a problem with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something we can really talk about in terms of
And-
predestination and everything.
Because everyone else, nothing, I mean, they live their lives, good or bad, whatever, but they never mention like having any kind of connection or any kind of anything spiritual, whatever, pre-plague.
Yeah.
And this is one of those instances that there is, and I thought that was really interesting, and I just felt like they didn't use that enough in the book.
Yeah, I think that's there's something to be said about being doomed, and there's something tantalizing about that construct, about how regardless of how much she thinks that it was her decision, the fact that Larry rejected her, or she might have made some wrong choices along the way. I think it's supposed to be implied that she never had a chance.
No, she
and there's a pro to and a con to that. I think it's pro because it kind of emboldens Randall Flagg as this evil entity that's inescapable. Even though we kind of learn that's not the case. Somewhat, not so much of a spoiler alert, but I think by showing Nadine's struggle or lack thereof, kind of gives a little more menace to Randall Flagg. At the same time, it doesn't make for the most interesting character study because it's a little unfortunate that she doesn't really have that glimpse. I mean, I still have a problem with the fact that she never gets any, never gets any of the dreams from Mother Abigail. She's totally rejected by Mother Abigail because she's got, the flag sort of mark on her. And I don't know if that's, again, it's such a weird conundrum because yes, it does. Again, it makes Flag more of a villain, but I don't know if that's great writing or if it's weird. I have very conflicted feelings about it.
I think this kind of goes back to the good versus evil thing and what is predetermined and what is not. Because it seems like this is obviously her fate. Everybody else in this book has dreams about both Mother Abigail and Flag. She's the only one that does not have any dreams about Mother Abigail. Mm-hmm. And she's the only one that Mother Abigail sees and does not recognize, essentially. And I think this is also King's way. Granted, ultimately, I don't want to say too many spoilers. God exists in the book, he just does in this book. But King himself has never been that religious. And I think this is also a way of saying, isn't religion so unfair? Even if this all turned out to be real, how does it explain away all the horrors and the unjustness of the world?
My reaction is a little different, and I'm not sure why. Because I agree with pretty much everything you're saying, and I wish that her character had been a little better fleshed out. But I'm actually pretty drawn to Nadine, and I think the quality that...
Oh, yeah, I'm drawn, totally drawn, yeah.
I think the quality that makes me so interested in her is that it seems clear that she's doomed. I agree. Yeah. From almost the moment that there's this odd gentleness about her, and yet there's just something that's off from moment one. And I think the gentleness comes from like a longing for goodness that she knows is unattainable.
Yes.
It actually reminds me, in a completely different context, but a little bit of The Last Rung on the Ladder, only in that it's not goodness, it's just like happiness or stability or a life, and it's out of reach. And maybe was almost always out of reach. And here the dream that Larry has, that Nadine is in, where Mother Abigail is talking to Nadine about, you've got a good man with you, if you would just accept him in, maybe there would be some sort of redemption for you. I just wish that had been hers, right? Because it seems like that maybe there isn't actually a chance, but there's this faint little tiny outside possibility that if she had opened herself up to some sort of love or connection with other human beings outside of dependency, then maybe her life would have turned out differently.
Yeah, there's a great passage about this, specifically about this, and is on page 795. And
What edition is that?
It's the Anchor Books edition with
Smart
the cover that reminds me of Poland in World War II.
That's right.
She, the narrator describes her plight as saying, "Boulder was her last hope. The old woman was her last hope. The sanity and rationality she had hoped to find at Stovington had begun to form in Boulder. They were good, she thought, the good guys, and if only it could be that simple for her, caught in her crazy web of conflicting desires." And so, yeah, there is this yearning that she wants to be this good person, but I think even she knows that it's just not going to happen, because she has the eye over her constantly. And I don't know if it is, I wonder if it is the eye or if it is just her spirit. I mean,
You know what's actually a much better comparison? The femme fatales from film noir. Like, I think about, like, Double Indemnity.
Oh,
Right?
totally. And they
Is it Barbara
they,
Stanwyck and
they
Fred McGregor?
amp that up in the miniseries too. They kind of condense her character from a bunch of people, and we'll get into that later. But I think that's another thing that coming from only having seen the miniseries and reading this book, I was surprised that she was actually not at all the person that they make her out to be in the miniseries, because they kind of, for lack of a better term, dumb things down, because they condense like 3 characters into Nadine. But in the book, I was like, wow, she's a teacher, and like, she's got this whole, like, she's not just inherently this bad person, but I feel like, yeah, they do have there is this like femme fatale thing with her where you do, I don't know, they turn her into that for Larry almost, I feel. I don't know. The whole like love triangle thing there between, him and
Lucy.
and Nadine is interesting, but yeah, no, I agree with you. It is she is like that kind of character. Yeah.
I think Radiohead said it best, and as they're wont to do with Nadine. You can try the best you can. You can try the best you can. The best you can is good enough, but in this case, maybe it's not so good enough.
it's
Well,
not so
Mike?
good enough.
And she doesn't maybe try the best she can.
And ultimately, she thinks she is. She thinks she's doing good enough, but maybe she's not doing good enough. And, but I do have something to say about the. This goes back to what we were talking about with religion, and this is just a king aside that happens to take place halfway through the book, and he writes: "The beauty of religious mania is that it has the power to explain everything. Once God or Satan is accepted as the first cause of everything which happens in the mortal world, nothing is left to chance or change." One such incantatory phrase. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Lou, if you're out there listening, correct me on that pronunciation. We don't forget, Lou. As we now see through a glass darkly, and mysterious are the ways he chooses his wonders to perform or mastered, logic can be happily tossed out the window. Religious mania is one of the few infallible ways of responding to the world's vagaries, because it totally eliminates pure accident. To the true religious maniac, it's all on purpose. So I think this kind of addresses the predestination and the fate, and like Mike, you were saying about Nadine's unavoidable doom, and that she's just a doomed character. And hey, it's all black and white when it comes to a lot of fanaticism. It's
true. It's true. Well, we've heard of the Book of Esther. We've heard of the Book of Nadine. I think book 2 is really the Book of Harold.
Yeah.
I mentioned it before. I really do love Harold. And I do think that Harold is the best part of book 2, because Harold really does have a choice. He starts off on the good spectrum. If you really go back and look at it, he helped out Franny. He was trying. Granted, yes, he was evil in the sense of that he wants to be. He's a rotten human being, but he still has the chance to be good. And
he's still a kid at this point.
And he's still a kid. And, his time in Boulder for me, was really the only thing that kept me sane going on, which is funny and ironic considering that he's an insane person.
Right.
But, his whole sort of personal struggles that he has with being good. I mean, because, there's a great, when King gets inside Harold's head, it's some of the most complex writing that's in this book. When I think when Harold relates himself and his struggle with feeling Flag's presence in the West calling him, he relates it to magnets, and it's a really well written sequence there where King describes exactly the pull that these characters are feeling, and how even if he wanted to run away from both sides, he couldn't even do that because it's just it's outside of his control at this point. And there's that whole thing where he's trying to smile, and he's always trying to be like this. He's putting on a facade for everyone, but everyone really does actually kind of buy it, even though they're mildly suspicious. But if you think about it, he really is kind of a beacon for a lot of different weird storylines and kind of alternative. I mean, I love the sort of bond he has with Larry, in the sense that he keeps Larry thinks he's this magnanimous person that's this great brave hero, and in a way Harold's really smart and practical, so you kind of have to look back and go, well, no, he really does know his shit. And so it's kind of cool when you see Larry's perspective, and it kind of gives you that sense that he is doing right, and some of the stuff that he's proposing at the committee, there are right ideas, and he does actually get down in the dirt and try to work. Yeah. So I did believe that there was some sort of thing there, and I tried to imagine, me not having seen the miniseries and having read the book before, but I just think that there's that struggle of whether he can go one way or the other is interesting, and the way that King also positions it is interesting too. I mean, for example, there's that scene where he wants to kill Stu, and when he actually approaches Stu, it's not written from Harold's point of view. It's written from Stu's point of view, and you see Stu kind of being I second guess this guy, right? So then you kind of see that no, there is a chance for him. People actually do feel bad about what their feelings towards him, even though they're all kind of right. And then it cuts back to Harold, and he's a fucking mess, because he's I can't believe people are showing me goodwill. This is new to me. I don't get it. And so I mean, that for me, that layer there was hands down the most interesting part of this story so far.
I think that one of Harold's biggest issues is that first of all, he's so young. Second of all, I'm sure most of the time growing up in those classrooms where he was even bullied, he was probably the smartest kid in the room. And I think he got away with continuing to be so smart. He leaves messages behind in farms, which ultimately kind of guides Larry along the way. But he's so aware of how smart he thinks he is, and that is ultimately his downfall. Because he thinks he's better than everybody in the free zone. He thinks he's the one that's got all the answers, but he's going to let these people go ahead and just fuck it up, because he doesn't. Now he's just on the road to destruction.
Yeah, it's not just that he knows how smart he is. It's that he knows how smart he is, and he assumes everyone else is dumb.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and even that even bleeds through with Larry. And I love that scene when Larry first meets Franny, and they're and he's like, "Oh, is Harold here?" And,
He's
the hero.
She's
like, "No, no." But I love that scene though, their exchange, because she's just so bewildered at how he views Harold, and I feel like that starts to trickle down through everybody else. They start to doubt how they originally kind of inherently felt about Harold, and even though they were dead right, I think that had enough people done that, maybe Harold, because I feel like Harold is so complicated that I feel like is the only character in the book, in book 2 for sure, that even though I know what happens, I actually started thinking maybe there's a chance.
Yeah.
Maybe he could turn himself around if he just gives in and lets these people make him feel good and make him feel part of the community, and actually realizes that, you know, if you just chill out, dude, like, you know.
Well, he's obviously I think he's a severely depressed person too.
Well,
I think that figures into it.
It goes into the idea of hope and faith also, in that, you know, if you're too pragmatic and you're too cynical, cynicism is a huge fault for everything. I mean, if you really go back and think, I think a little bit of cynicism is necessary in this world because it's a cynical world. But when you lean too far on it, it can be very, very dangerous, and it can lead down to some really awful thinking, especially when you're dealing with a blank sheet like they are in Boulder. And there's a passage on page 992 of the Anchor Books edition featuring the World War II photo, where they write, King writes, Harold climbed into the back of one of the trucks, his mind churning helplessly. All of a sudden, the old grudges, the old hurts, and the unpaid debts seemed as worthless as the paper money choking all the cash registers of America. Could that be true? Could it possibly be true? He felt panicked, alone, scared. No, he decided at last. It couldn't possibly be true. Because consider, if you were strong-willed enough to be able to resist the low opinions of others when they thought you were queer or an embarrassment or just a plain old bag of shit, then you had to be strong-willed enough to resist what? Their good opinion of you? Wasn't that kind of logic? Well, that kind of logic was lunacy, wasn't it? And you could tell, like, he's still trying to cling on to what he knew in his past world, which was cynicism. I mean, he was beaten down by his culture and marginalized because, I mean, we know why, just based on that one image of him pushing the lawnmower. And so those old fears are something that he can't shake because he has a mistrust in people already. Mm-hmm. And that mistrust is it's like Inception. It's like that seed that's just going to always just keep growing no matter how much he suppresses it. And all he needs is someone to tip it off. Yeah. And I don't know how we feel about Nadine being that one to tip it off, especially since she seems to already be so maligned. But I don't know. I think, you know, little sections like that, King peppers so many of those within this that it's such a believable transition to me that when he finally, you know, even when he does actually contend that, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be Hawk. I'm going to be this thing. And then
Hawk.
He opens Hawk. You know, that's
Love
not
it.
that bad. What
Cool
was
name.
that? What was that Alan Alda's name?
Hawk from Twin Peaks.
Oh, Hawk from Twin Peaks. I love Hawk from Twin Peaks.
And General Hawk from G.I. Joe.
Hawkeye from MASH. But and then he finally opens the door and Nadine's there and is, you know, going to be his sexual fantasy purveyor. But
That's a little pound cake tease.
A lot of pound cake tease that's coming up soon. But yeah, so I agree. I think the tip off is believable there. But yeah, I mean, some of those mental digressions just are great. It's great.
Yeah, I think that my experience is a little different because to me, I agree with everything you're saying about cynicism. And I think that the formula ultimately, and this is oversimplification, but I think it stands up okay, that ultimately leads to Harold's downfall is that it's a combination of cynicism and bitterness and entitlement, right? What he's owed, what others are denying him, and cynicism about the world in general. And if he had managed to overcome, like, maybe even one of those, certainly if two of them, I mean, we see that cynical people can still survive in this world, right? Like, that's what we get from Glenn. Mm-hmm. But he's just so, from really the first moment that we meet Harold, I was like, oh, bad news. But then his first interaction with Stu sort of clearly paints them both. And this will be part 2 of the Feminist Variety Hour from your rotating panel of female guests.
Of your only rotating panel of female
I'm the
guests.
rotating panel of female guests. So there's this, I hate to use the term toxic masculinity because there's a decent chance that, like, a lot of you are going to stop listening right now, but that's okay. So we'll just skip right past that and instead talk about the difference between nice guys in quotation marks and just nice people, right? So Harold seems to think because he quote unquote rescued Fran, that he is somehow entitled to her affection. Mm-hmm. And that conversation that they have where Stu says, essentially, I don't have the quote in front of me, but essentially that you can't own a woman. And the only way, like if there are two types of men in the world, men who lay next to a woman who wants them and uses his hand, and a man who lays next to a woman and wants them and takes what he wants, and that you want to be the other kind. That you just use your fucking hand, basically. And that seems to be a bit of a revelation to Harold, which I don't think means like, oh, well, we have a prospective rapist on our hands. But he does view Fran as property and as his due because he's put in the time and he's frustrated by the fucking friend zone. And then you add everything else into that and it just leads to someone who's going to go wrong.
Yeah, and you've got Harold who thinks that he and Fran are the last people on the earth. And then they run into these guys, and instead of having, oh my God, there's more people alive, he's so enamored with his feelings for Fran, just all of a sudden,
she's no longer mine.
Yes, and it has nothing to do with anything else other than that.
You're going to take
it's
her
this
from
base, it's this base like primordial, Promethean thing, and it's and as intelligent as he is, he's the one that has that reaction. Which is like, yeah, clearly you're not as smart as you think you are.
Yeah, because this is another instance of it doesn't matter how smart, how dumb you are. These people are still going to have these white knights, as it were, are still going to be out there and thinking that they are owed everything because of how quote unquote good they think they are. And it's not the way the world works. And so he's the perfect example. I agree with Allison.
Yeah.
Because where he's got Stu, who is, I think you were going to make the comparison with Stu and Harold, between Stu and Harold.
Well, because Stu also meets a woman when he thinks he's maybe never going to see another human being again, finds himself attracted to her, and never thinks, oh, well, it's the end of the world. That's great for me. Here's my newest conquest. That's not something that occurs to him.
He's hesitant with her, and as she is to him.
Yes. And also has the presence of mind to realize, God, the worst thing that I could do in this situation is to antagonize this unstable young man, that I should probably prioritize that over my own feelings and senses of attraction. And it just, it's a great contrast. So while Julie Lowry is maybe an example of King not being quite as forward-thinking as he maybe is now as a human, I think that contrast in particular is really, really solid and smart.
Well, and then also he feels vindicated by the evil. He knows that, there's that section again, and not to always just pull from the book, but
from which edition of the book?
It's thank you, Allison, for asking. It's a Anchor Books edition featuring again the World War II. Looks like a portrait from Poland. We're really hammering.
We're really pushing the rule of three joke, but let's just keep it going now. We have to just keep going with it.
It's gonna be like that scene in Hot Rod.
Never saw it.
Oh yeah,
where he falls down the hill. Okay, check that out if you haven't seen it.
If you love The Stand, check out Andy Samberg in Hot Rod.
the classic Hot Rod.
Well, he talks about. Harold kind of. There's a lot. There's a lot of situations where Harold's just in his own mind and in his own head, so to speak, and he details the fact that is a good community. He knows that this is a good community, but he also knows that there's a bad community out there. And he says, and he himself, when faced with the knowledge that he was free to accept what was, had rejected the new opportunity, which is, his new life here. He could be Hawk. To seize it would have been to murder himself. The ghost of every humiliation he had ever suffered cried out against it. His murdered dreams and ambitions came back to eldritch life, and asked if he could forget them so easily. In the new Free Zone society, he could only be Harold Lauder. Over there, he could be Prince. So yeah, it goes back into exactly what you're saying, also. It does feed right into his ego and id that like he still feels there is a part of him that is telling him that, why do you have to act like a fucking asshole? Just shed this and move on. But then there's that other part that's like, no, I got here trusting my own instincts, my bastard instincts. I got here, and there are people out there that are going to respect that, and I think that even over Nadine actually inevitably is what kind of tips him over. But again, very complicated character. not saying I love the guy in terms of what he is, because he's a total fucking
Oh yeah,
psychopath.
I would never want to hang out with him.
No. But in terms of reading about him, is what got me through book
Very
2.
compelling.
For sure. And
And that's actually a good transition for me, because I'm going to talk about somebody I know. I read The Stand back in December, so I've been holding as many thoughts as I can inside for about, I guess, almost. It's been about 4 months now,
and you've teased it on text.
And I've teased some of it, but I know some of you have gone on tangents about the kid and how much you hate the kid and this and that. And that's fine. I love the kid chapter.
God, really?
This is exciting. I'm finally going to talk about this, and I finally get to be the contrarian that I hate in everyday pop culture.
I wish
the
that
thing.
you guys were here to see Mike and Mac and I all just physically reacted. We all like pushed back from the table.
I felt like I was in the middle of a David Lynch thing where like, the camera just started to shake violently. It was like, here we go. Now it's a dream. No, here's the thing.
No, it's okay.
But
people,
this goes back.
People like pay it forward out there. They like.
Hey,
they like.
you know, oh, here we
They
go.
like. I'm just joking. I'm joking.
Fun fact: Pay It Forward is not a bad movie until the last 5 minutes, and then,
Boss Baby is a huge hit.
and then it becomes awful. I just want to make that.
Where did Justin go?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. This goes back. That was a good unintentional transition on your end, Mike, because I don't like the kid. He's a psychopath. What I like about this character is I feel like this is one of the only instances where we have a character who is not like Lloyd, who is quote unquote, who's kind of described as a bad guy, obviously, and Trash Can Man, who is crazy and unreliable, but ultimately devoted to Flag. This character of the kid is a total wild card. He is just walking madness, and he doesn't give a shit about. Well, obviously, he doesn't give a shit about Mother Abigail and the Free Zone. That's to be. He doesn't even give a shit about Flag. He openly calls out Flag for being useless. And this is a guy who loves his Coors Light. He loves saying things like, "You don't tell me, I'll tell you," which I know everybody here just can't get enough of.
Let me tell you.
But again, this is an example of, and this is something I think that if he was in the chapter with just about anybody else, he would have either been killed immediately or just avoided at all costs. But because the easiest prey of all the main characters is Trash Can Man. And so now you've got this guy and the kid who, does anybody remember, I think this is the reason I really enjoyed the chapter and how uneasy I felt reading this entire chapter. The episode 6 Feet Under, when David, it's a one-off episode when David is kidnapped for the day.
Yeah.
He totally reminds me of that character and the unpredictability. Oh, wait, you never saw 6 Feet Under?
It's been a long time. I can't remember.
It's a pretty intense episode where David is kidnapped and you don't know what this guy's going to do to him. And they go on he forces him to take drugs. And he forces, I think at one
literally
point.
soaks him in kerosene at the end.
Yeah,
and
and
then you think he's going to light him on fire and he doesn't.
You don't know what's
But
going to happen.
It's intense.
And so for me, the kid really reminds me of that character. And I think
It reminds me of Frank from Blue Velvet.
that's another good comparison.
But you know,
just like these people who are so crazy but have total control. And I felt for me that was what was I can't imagine the book without the kid. How about that? I can't imagine it.
I think that having the kid in there to me it was just like King realized, oh, you know, I don't have my greaser in here, and he just
That's a good point.
he
Yeah, yeah.
shoehorns another
Henry
greaser
Bauer's
in there.
here.
You know, I mean, seriously, even down to the way he speaks. And I know, like, I think Randall was talking about how he's supposed to be like the
Dan mentioned
embodiment
how King says he's the embodiment of Charles Starkweather, who, you hear about in the song "Nebraska" by Bruce Springsteen,
right?
It influenced Terrence Malick's Badlands.
And I was also having a conversation with Dan earlier about how maybe like is he real? Is he? Like,
I think that's
he's
the thing.
So crazy. So
Yeah.
and Trash is so crazy. Like maybe he doesn't see this person, but then no, I don't want to get into book 3.
He's absolutely real. I think that's
so,
that from King was very strange because I never got the feeling reading this that he was anything other than a real person.
Yeah, I definitely think it was real.
And I think he's a real person. I think that maybe
he
was influenced.
he is, but
I think what King was trying to say, looking back at some of the quotes as I read them, was that the character was influenced by the existence of
Right.
Charles. Starkweather. But let's talk about a little bit more though about what I don't like about the kid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's,
Not as in the
because-
character, because and Mike, I want you to take this a little bit because you talked about this the gun rape sequence.
Yeah.
We know he's a madman enough, and there's always a fine line to draw between like when should we depict how do we depict violence in entertainment, and when is it to the point where we're over the line. And for me, it's the line is usually further away, I think, a lot of the time. But for me, reading this, I felt, what? Why? I know, obviously, we're talking about it. It was served as a purpose to serve as a shock. It does that, but not in an entertaining way in any way, or compelling way.
Well, here's the problem with that shock, is that, you know, again, this is written in the late 70s and updated in the 90s, and you know the idea. I mean, Will and Grace wasn't even around at this point. No, I mean, it was very uncommon to have characters, you know, queer characters in any stories. And I have a problem with the kid in this is that, you know, there is you know, gay. They have sex together, and it's obviously portrayed as this rotten, miserable thing because they're rotten, miserable people. And it wouldn't have dawned on me at all. It wouldn't have been a problem if they also didn't do that sort of icky, sort of like, ooh, look at they're gay and like they're evil. They're doing something evil in the eyes of God. If they didn't also do that with Bradenton in book 1, and
he's the only other gay character.
Yeah,
I think,
and there are no other gay characters. And again, it's hard to slam this because it was written at a time when, you know, it wasn't so prevalent in pop culture to include, you know, to have that sort of inclusivity. But reading it now, it is very like, especially when you're tying this to such religious themes, and we all know how the you know, Christians and Catholics love their gay people. And you know, it does feel like a condemnation of the gay culture, even though I know that's not the idea. And I know, I mean, King is the most like liberal, like bleeding heart liberal out there. But just reading this, that's how I looked at it. I thought it was very weird that like the only instances of gay characters, other than the baffled lesbian experience.
Can't wait to talk about that.
It just felt very weird to me, and maybe that's me looking way too into it. But it's
the kids section's weird to me because it was like King decided, well, let's give Trash Can someone to worry about, so we can maybe see like, you know, a more rounded character with Trash Can Man. Maybe he's not so bad. Maybe there's worse people than him.
I could see that.
Or maybe there's good in him, and now we're gonna feel bad for Trash because he's being kind of bullied by this. We're seeing like the bullies that kind of haunt Trash outside. But I was like, no, who cares? Like, Trash Can's so crazy, and he's such an unreliable narrator that half the time I was really like, is the kid really here? Now, obviously he is, and later on they kind of come from that. But I didn't get it. And
I think with Trash, I don't think it would have worked with him traveling all the way to Vegas and finding somebody kind of how, you know, Stu and Franny and company find Dana and her crew.
And
well,
I guess,
and what I'm saying is they end up in Vegas together. Nick meets Tom. They end up not Vegas. They end up in Boulder. Nick meets Tom. They end up in Boulder. I can't imagine Trash having another partner with him and then making it all the way to Vegas. And again, I think King definitely wanted to have a long, like we were talking about earlier, like a short story for Trash that would be a long 50, 60 pages. And he wanted to include somebody else. And why not include this person in which there's no way in hell this person's going to make it through the next 60 pages, one way or the other. That's why I think the kid was included in that regard.
Well, I would have rather seen a short story with Lloyd, but that's just me.
Well, oh, absolutely. That's the other thing. Like, as we look back on book 1, if you read book 1, like Allison, for instance, you read book 1, you'd never read it before, you'd never seen the movie before. Mm-hmm. So you're reading book 1, it's great. But then when you start to read book 2 and 3, you start to realize, at least I start to realize, I wish there was another focus on even a whole brand new villain in book 1. I wish it wasn't just Lloyd and Trash, because we get the perspectives of 4 or 5 quote unquote good guys, and then we just get 2 bad guys in book 1 essentially, and then in book 2, one of those bad guys is just a side character at the end of the Trash chapter, and I feel like that's another example of why I think for me reading book 2, I was so interested in the kids section, because there's the rest of it's just a bunch of sternos backpatting and having beers on a cool Colorado night, and
we have a couple of little moments with Lloyd, but they're little.
Yeah, they're little. Yeah. They're not enough.
Contemplating cannibalism and shit like that.
Yeah,
but it feels like
But that's in book 1, right? Isn't that in book 1?
God,
where
is
he's
it?
yeah,
When
when he's in
he's
prison,
in-
he's in
Oh,
jail.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, you're right.
I'm saying book
No,
two,
but-
he's like,
Yeah,
in-
book two,
you know,
he just kind of disappears. And
Well,
the
he's
thing
just with it
book
with
one-
trash. That's the only instance.
But the thing with book 1 too is like, you know, not knowing the trajectory of these characters, if you're just reading for the first time, like, I mean, they spend a lot of time with Larry, so I guess you can kind of assume that he's going to be good. But like, he's grapples so much with him being such a bad man.
Yeah.
You know, like he could have easily ended up being a bad guy. You know, had he not gone through what he goes through. So, but yeah, I really wish there were some more characters. Even even Julia Lowry, because then you would have been able to go into
that's
that
what I'm
character
saying.
more.
If
and
you've got
flesh her
Julia
out,
Lowry,
make her a real character.
if you give her as much time as you give Franny or Stu or anybody in book 1, who knows what we're thinking about her in book 2 when she meets Nick? That's the whole. You're just developing something there, you know.
I look at it kind of how when Mac and I play Battlefront, and when you log in, you can't have like 2 people on the Imperials and like 4 people with the Rebels. Like,
That's a very
when you do an
great
online
point.
game, like you need to have the equals there to kind of balance it out. And it doesn't have to be that specific to the numbers, but
Maybe if Battlefront was
say,
around
you
back in
know,
the mid '70s,
yeah, I mean, maybe
he would have taken a cue.
he would have saw that loading screen and be like, aha.
You know, I'm always Krennic, and we got Jen Urso over here.
Yeah,
Oh.
you know, it's
Love Rogue One. That's
yeah,
a,
Rogue One's great.
you can't see the sarcasm dripping from my face. The last thing I do want to say about the kid is I love how we don't even see him die. And
Yeah.
he's left in his own personal hell because he lives to just annoy people and have people look at him and listen to him. And all his doom is to not have a gun and be stuck in the back of a car, having to decide: do I leave this car and have these wolves eat me to death, or do I just starve to death in this small confined
of,
prison all by myself?
nice
and
little-
it's just a little poetic ending for that little piece of shit, the kid.
Nice little echo to Cujo.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. That's a good point. But I'll take Cujo over the wolves any day of the week.
Can we talk about Franny?
In
Yeah.
book 2,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people say that, you know, and again, like my whole thing was Molly Ringwald was my introduction to Franny. And you know, I didn't mind her in the miniseries at all, but like so many people I had heard like were like, no, she's not. Franny's not, you know, Molly Ringwald, and she plays her like this and da da da. And Franny's this cool character, and she's this and this and that. And book 1, I felt absolutely she's this like very much this individual, and I was really like all about her character, and it was very very different from the miniseries. But book 2, I just feel like the story, a lot of characters just stall out, and I just feel like she just becomes, to me, I just felt like she was like this almost like this one note character, you know, that would just have conversations with Stu, and then they'd like do it, you know, like I don't know. I just wanted them to have. I wanted her to have more going on, and I guess she does with, you know, Larry, and they kind of go on the adventure together and stuff. But like, I wanted her to have so much more throughout the rest of this book, and it just didn't happen.
He makes her. Well, King, I feel, makes her just so emotional throughout. And I know we could say that, you know, when the hormones when you're pregnant and whatnot. I understand that, but I just feel like she's so often depending on everybody else in a lot of ways. That's just kind of. I hate saying it's hard to betray a character because it's the person's. This is what the writer wants to do. But in a way, it just doesn't. It doesn't echo back to who she is in book 1. That's my take on Franny in book 2, and honestly for the rest of the novel. I don't know what else anybody else thinks about that.
I
but
mean, again, it goes back to those journals, because that's like one of the biggest ways
Yeah.
to get her voice. And the way that King writes her in those journals is so like, it's very like the woman that's sitting at the window waiting for the loved one. And like, I mean, like, look at this line. It's like, you know, she writes in her journal on page 655 again of the Anchor Books edition featuring.
I have
Paul
that
and Trim.
edition, Mike. I'll read along.
Oh, nice. Do you want to read along with me?
Oh,
All right,
God.
655 at the
Where is
bottom,
Oh,
right here.
Yeah, I know.
All right, you
All
got
right,
it?
ready?
1, 2, 3.
I know this must sound awful, but I really wish I had someone to
help
help
me
be
keep
warm
on this
bed.
bed.
I even have a candidate in mind.
I mean,
Thank you.
come on.
That
That
worked.
was,
I
I
think
hope
that
that was
worked.
worth it, guys.
I think that was seamless. I don't think any of us bungled that.
It was
I-
amazing
you know.
because individually you each sound like a dude, and somehow together I was transported.
You were like, oh,
wow, this
This
does
is
sound
Fran.
like a pregnant college student.
a young
I-
20-something
I
pregnant
mean,
college student.
I see you're nodding. Like, what are your thoughts on Franny? This
Well, I I still think that she's an interesting character.
Yeah,
I was
no.
just a little disappointed that a character who had so much agency in the first book had so little in the second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, I
'Cause I love her in the first book. Loved her.
Yeah.
I thought she was one of the most interesting characters, and then it's just like one note in this book too.
Dear Diary.
Yeah.
That is exactly the tone
And you
of
don't
the
even-
journals. It feels like it's not coming from a 21-year-old that we met in the first book. It feels like it's
Right.
coming from like a 14-year-old.
And not to sidetrack, but we didn't talk about this when we talked about Harold. How he starts writing the ledger, and does the ledger work against him or for him in terms of like having his own journal and going into that?
Well, he bleeds a lot of his own angst and anxiety. You know, all his anxieties are poured into the journal, and he talks about that. And then, in a way, it does embolder, it actually empowers him because
It's like a sounding board, essentially, to no one but him.
And then, as you learn in book 3, it really,
Yeah.
you know,
And not to stay too far off the subject, but I think it's interesting that the journal that Franny keeps comes back to haunt her because Harold finds it and then pretty much loses it after he reads it. That the same thing happens to him. Like he's worried about people finding this thing that's going to basically out him. And I don't know. It's weird that he would decide to write that when,
And keep
he
it
used
under that
the
huge
journal
stone under the,
Yeah.
it's just all the thing.
But
I feel like maybe tip 1 for surviving the apocalypse is wait to keep a journal until you've got a society where you can have a locked fucking drawer.
yeah.
Like maybe
Yeah.
that's tip 1 for surviving the apocalypse.
if you can't turn the lights on, maybe.
Well, no.
keep the
Step
pen
1 would be
away.
make sure you have an uncorrupted source of water. Step 2 would be no journals until you have privacy.
Yeah.
And
Until you
also,
get
obviously,
li-
make sure you decide whether or not you want to ratify the Constitution, because that makes for a really captivating section of book 2.
Look, all right, and that leads into my character that I love again over if we want to talk about an actual hero, I love Glenn Bateman, and those discussions about building government to me was interesting. Just coming from a history background, not to be a stuffy son of a bitch by saying that, but that whole Sunrise over Boulder opening chapter when it's just him and Stu.
Oh,
and
that's
they're kinda
great.
talking
No,
about
that stuff's great.
forming the government. I mean, that is just I think I read that chapter like twice just because it's very, you have those sort of college sort of discussions and you're like, oh, how would we fix the world? And they are on the actual edge of the world being able to fix it. So like it felt very real to me, and it was also just a nice moment. Like I love
that.
Like I love those sort of things. But yeah, when they do actually get into the meat and potatoes of how they're going to put this together, again, it's overwriting. They could have done one scene of that, or maybe a couple, not like 10.
I'll talk about more of that when we get to the cemetery.
Yeah.
Oh, is that your own cemetery?
I'm not kidding. That's my own cemetery. We'll talk about that.
Glenn, yeah, and I like Glenn a lot, but I do feel like it's the same thing. Like Glenn tells a lot, and then we also see it happen in the committee, and it's like we didn't need both. Like if we could watch this unfold in the committee, and even have Glenn chime in and kind of say like, "Oh, this is going this way," or just have Glenn state like, "This is probably how the committee is going to turn out," because we come back to it later, and then they book 3 like they go into enough of it where it's like, well, you didn't really need all this talk in book 2 because you kind of see a lot of that play out. But anyways,
the vignettes are gone by book 2, and I feel like they should have come back for all the committee meeting chapters.
Well, they have they have
so and so got together and decided to do this.
Well, the closest
Chapter
they
2, so and so, that's
the closest they come to that is when the power comes on and you see like the little like things coming, like turning on in different houses.
Which is interesting because I feel like that's one of the only things from book 2 that survives to the miniseries. I'm going to keep going back to the miniseries because that's my only point of reference. But anyways.
Yeah,
but I know you like Glenn a lot, though.
I do like Glenn, and again, I think a lot of it's like because I imagine Ray Walston, and I love Ray Walston.
I also think it's interesting that like there's just characters like I feel like Franny, Stu, Ralph, Nick, even Tom, like they just stall out in book 2. They're just like back in the background, and I know that they focus a lot more on like Larry and Nadine and Harold and even Franny and Larry, but they don't really give them a whole ton. And maybe it's because we already kind of know who they are and they're kind of the most fixed characters at that point because they spend a lot of time with Nick and Tom in book 1.
I mean, I agree with you to a point, but I think of all the people you mentioned, I don't think Tom stalls out at all.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, Tom definitely gets some good
talk about
development
Tom.
there.
Let's talk about
we haven't really been able
because
to
he's a character that's introduced in book 2. So So let's talk about Tom. Who wants to talk? Let's talk Tom. Let's have a Tom talk.
Tom talk. I love Tom. I mean, again, can't stop picturing that guy from Coach playing him, but
He's great.
He's great. I think the introduction is gorgeous. I think the irony that he's linked with, Nick Andros, is Deaf and Dumb, is brilliant. And just really kind of almost like you mentioned Steinbeck before. It seemed very Steinbeckian to me. Almost kind of like a twist on Of Mice and Men.
Yeah.
I thought of Mice and Men the whole time.
Yeah, and his relationship with Nick is might be my favorite relationship in this whole story. I mean, eventually where Tom links up with in book 3 is great, but I don't know. What are your
I
thoughts
think
on him?
with Tom, obviously he's handicapped, as we know, and there's just this really lovely sense of innocence with him that you just can't get with literally anybody else in the book, even with Stu, who is just kind of just your noble guy. I don't see any flaws with Tom, but it's in a way that's just totally believable, because I feel like he's always going to have that kind of childlike wonderment about the world, and fears, obviously, because he's still very afraid, especially like you touched upon earlier, Allison, when Julie teases him about the Pepto-Bismol being
so awful.
poison.
So mean.
It breaks your heart.
Fun. It's just
For no reason. It just breaks your heart. So I love Tom, and I like Tom more than the kid.
Thanks, Justin.
Are
you happy?
Thanks a lot. No,
in the last episode, Randall and Mike kept saying, "Just wait till you meet Tom Kellen. Just wait till you meet." And I'm really excited. Like it totally lived up to the hype. We were on a break earlier, and I was saying there are these tropes in storytelling that mostly you want to avoid, some because they're harmful and some because they're just boring. And we were talking earlier about like Bagger Vance and the magical Negro trope, which I think is really harmful. But there's a similar like magical differently abled person here to teach you a lesson about kindness, and that drives me up the wall. And if you're going to do it, you have to do it so well that it doesn't matter that that's what you're doing. And I feel like that is the case here. With both Tom and Leo. God, that's his name, right? Now I'm
Joe. It's Joe, but
becomes
he's
Leo,
actually
right.
Leo.
well, it depends.
Okay. Well, they're both just very well-drawn characters that I am interested in and want to read about, and that I find compelling. And the fact that they're also used in this sort of plot device way remains vaguely troubling, but not enough for it to actually matter. They're just too well written for that to matter a whole bunch.
I agree, because where he succeeds here, I believe King fails years later with Dreamcatcher and Duddits. And that's an example, like you said, Allison, where you use a disabled person to serve this kind of magical, supernatural service.
Yeah, the Duddits
character is
underwritten.
not.
Oh god.
But
It's
we'll get to
also-
Dreamcatcher in about 3-4 years from now, I think, at this point.
It's also interesting to me that when they put Tom under, and that's in book 2, right?
It's book 2.
Book 2 is so long.
It's 700.
When they put Tom under, and he kind of channels into when he's God's Tom, and it is like this weird thing where, is he connecting with him because he's of this innocence there, and the same thing with Leo because he's a child. Is there this connection there with younger people or with innocence that is just severed when you grow up? And
I agree. I mean, there's even the whole case with, I think it's Franny who's very opposed to it, because they all understand of everybody there, you could probably condition Tom to not give away what's going on and who he is. And even though it's an easy way to go about it, Franny just feels so guilty having to have him do it. I think it's Franny. I believe it's Franny that has to. She's really reticent.
She's really against it, and I don't even think. I think she's even when they make the final decision. Doesn't she?
Yeah, she
She votes against it. Yeah,
So
and she's mad at Stu for going with it. Yeah,
it's one of the only decisions where it's not.
Well, because it ties back into her thing, and this is actually one of the components, or storylines of Franny I actually really do love in this, is that she is very steadfast in being like, no, like, why do we have to fight? Like, why are we reverting back to these old ways of like, we have to go to war, we have to do this.
Yeah.
And that was really, I loved that. Like, that was really compelling to me.
Yeah.
I think that this moment is her best moment in book 2. The whole Tom section.
Yeah, because then she becomes like, you know,
The voice of reason.
And also like the soldier's wife, basically, towards the end of book 2. You know, and that's not the most compelling story
that
when you
part's
can't
not.
draw it out as much, you know. But yeah.
There's actually a Nadine quote that I think bears up the theory about children and innocence and maybe why that happens. And it's when she's talking about being a teacher, she says, "I love the little ones. Some of them were bruised, but none of them at that age irrevocably spoiled. The little ones are the only good human beings." And Larry says, kind of a romantic idea, isn't it? She shrugged. "Children are good, and if you work with them, you get to be a romantic. That's not so bad." And I think there's also a quote that Nick has when he first meets Tom about how he seems like a child, particularly when he is able to figure out, to reason that he's a deaf mute. His delight at getting the right answer is so childlike that I think that this totally bears up that theory.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's also another reason why Nadine feels so crushed when Leo leaves, because that was this connection to goodness that is now gone,
and purpose.
And now she has to, figure things out on her own, and last ditch effort.
Well,
I do wonder if Nadine, though, if she always saw Joe as not so much of like a loving. She says that she cares for Joe, obviously, / Leo, but I wonder if at the end of the day, if Joe / Leo just kind of served as a distraction from the inevitable for her. Like, she knew that once, for instance, she gives it one last shot with Larry, and Larry says no. And once Leo's gone, now she knows that there's nothing to deter her from going off to her inevitability with Flag.
I think more than a distraction, like a purpose.
Yes.
A purpose other
Yes.
than to be
Other
a
than
force of evil.
Flag.
Yeah,
exactly.
when Leo leaves, she's like, now I have to face myself.
Yes.
And actually, I can't. I'm not taking care of someone else. I have to take care of myself, and she can't. I mean, again, they don't give her a choice in the novel, which I don't like, because
I don't like it. Here's the thing about that, though.
I know
I don't like it, but that is, I think, a deliberate purpose that King is trying to put forward.
But because
she's the only
because
non-black and white.
Because I really loved her character, I just felt like it kind of felt like, well, she doesn't have a choice, and then these two men leave her, and and she goes to Larry, and it's like, well, Larry's make it or break it for her. I'm like, no, like, make it or break it yourself. I don't know. I wanted to see her make that decision on her own.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And then she even is still like wavering when she's like trying to seduce Harold, and then still goes through with it. So I don't know, but yeah, I definitely think that children are innocent.
We love Tom. So we were saying
we love Tom.
We love Tom.
There are a few things that I thought were kind of cool, how they expanded out on certain characters without even like kind of talking about the characters. For example, like Flag, I'd mentioned how Nadine's struggle actually kind of empowers him. But you also see Flag's reach with like the weasels, with like Mother Abigail, the wolves with like the kid, like even the tornado between Nick and Tom, how it's hinted that that's Flag.
Oh, that's such a great sequence.
And it's I totally
forgot
forgot
about that.
Yeah,
Wow, yeah, that's great.
And like even just the way that they haunt the damned. Like Harold feels that weight coming in from the west. Like Nadine, like is literally a channel for Flag. Like this book, he's not in it, but he is in it. Like he is here. So yeah, we've been talking about like how there isn't a big split, but his presence is still felt, which is kind of creepy, and so I thought that was like a cool way of building character in this, and maybe might be the reason why he didn't go to Vegas, because he wanted to kind of show his presence elsewhere. But I still think he could have, split it up a little bit. Yeah. But
what about Mother Abigail?
I said my piece on Mother Abigail.
I actually think that maybe we mostly covered her in structure and format. Although I will say, there's a character in August Wilson's Century Cycle, which is a series of plays about the American Black experience that are really incredible, and everyone should read them. They're profound pieces of writing.
He wrote Fences?
Yes, Fences is a part of that cycle.
Popular. Oh, okay.
And there's a character who appears repeatedly throughout that cycle. There's one for each decade of the century. Anyway, named Aunt Esther, like ancestor, works for me. Anyway, she's 285 years old. And there are a lot of similarities, though I think the August Wilson character is a little more dynamic. But it's, characters like this pop up a lot in literature. I think is like a vessel for a historic experience, for like the knowledge of decades, if not centuries. So I think she fulfills a function. I don't think anyone is going to go, man, you know who my favorite character in The Stand is? Not.
Yeah. She's a pivotal character, but not
an incredibly important character. Yes. But she's not. She's vital in terms of plot, and I would never say that she's just a plot device.
She's not the kid.
But no.
The kid is not my favorite character. I just wanted to talk about the kid. I have to keep defending myself.
Totally
I thought that she's a little. It was, kind of very intriguing character in the sense. I mean, she's really like the only black character in the story outside of the Rat Man, which we haven't gotten to really yet. But and she's Republican, which is I thought that was kind of
I think Franny's parents were Republican as well, I believe, but he was still a good man, I guess.
But there's also she seems very mean in some sections. Like she's talking about how. And I kind of liked it in the sense because it shows that she's not this like all knowing being that the miniseries obviously paints her as. But there's a part where she's just alone by herself, and she starts talking about how they're probably just going to create a society against her, and and how they're going to have their own ways, and she's kind of little. There's a little cynicism there that That was kind of interesting, but it was a little confusing in the,
I think it humanizes her in a way that, again, we can't really keep talking about the miniseries, but when we see her by herself in the miniseries, she's very folksy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hope they all get here in time. But in this, she's very much more of a human, essentially, in the book.
And obviously, that definitely informs the reasons why, she books it. Well, no, because it's pride. She's like, I put myself on this pedestal too much, like
she wastes away essentially, yeah.
And that's another part of the cemetery that I want to talk about.
Well,
shall we?
Well, there's one person you all wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, hold on. Before let's put off that path to death, to the cemetery, and because again,
you don't want to go down that road.
Because on our last episode,
celebrate this thing called life.
That's right. Oh, rest in peace, Prince, by the way.
Always and forever.
Always and forever. No, I do love Prince. But last time we were on our stand episode, we talked a little bit about Larry, how much we liked Larry, and Allison was a little more hesitant to jump on the Larry Lovin' bandwagon.
Yeah.
It was the Adam Stork interview.
It was the Adam Stork. Yeah, we love Adam Stork, and I hope you listen to that episode. He's a great guy. But Allison, where are you now with your travels with Larry Underwood?
Team Larry.
Hey,
I love Larry. You were all right. It's great. It's like somehow I just think you're lying to me every time you tell me something that's gonna happen, and I'm gonna change my mind about something. I'm like, nah, man. And then sure enough, no, it's great. His journey is very compelling, and I think there's this corner that he turns that I just. The moment when I really fell in love with him was when he starts to just be so excited about Harold.
Yeah.
And says, I can't wait, or the narrator says that he can't wait to buy that guy a beer or maybe a payday. Just because of the rapper and his excitement about finding this rapper, I totally came around.
Oh,
he's great.
And Inspector Larry makes
Inspector Underwood.
Inspector Underwood.
Yeah. Burt Macklin, FBI.
Yeah.
So I guess,
yes.
Totally.
Yes.
So I think that he's a really neat counterpoint to Harold, and that they're both struggling with whether or not they're fundamentally decent, and the fact that Larry keeps struggling and keeps trying to come out on the right side makes it clear that he is a fundamentally decent person with the same flaws as all of us, like selfishness and pride and ego and lack of care, and everybody does those things. And Yeah, I love Larry.
And I think that's great. That's what I was thinking. Like, you know, because again, I'd seen the miniseries, so I knew the trajectory of the character. But reading book one, you weren't sure.
Oh,
you
yeah.
were not on
I
board with
wasn't-
him.
I
You
was
weren't. Maybe
not.
he was just gonna
Do
turn
we
out to be
really
this
have to
jerk.
spend more time with this rock star?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to read the sentence, "Baby, can you take your man?" More
But
time.
I
He's a
and
righteous
now
man.
I love him. I love him.
I love that you love Larry.
How I Love to Love Larry. Which is a takeoff, of course, of How I Love to Love Nadine, which now transitions us into the more scarier aspects of book 2 with The Cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
All right, who wants to get us started in the old cemetery?
I think we could talk about a little section called the zoo,
Oh, yeah. God. Let's talk about the zoo.
which is just horrifying.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, we've got our heroes come upon a barricade on the road, and I can't even.
Well, it's very, very 28 days later, in a way.
yeah, except not 28 days later, but actually, it is kind of 28 days
Maybe
later.
it is 28 days
Yeah,
later,
no,
actually.
Maybe it could be 28 days later.
Yeah, it is kind of fast how both of those movies just have no hope in humanity, and I agree. I don't have much hope in humanity either.
Speaking of
so,
cynicism,
yeah,
there we go.
You know, I guess you might as well just call me a Harold Lauder.
Happily.
Yeah, that section is by far the most jarring. Just because it's so you
We
totally
haven't seen
believe it.
We
you
haven't
know?
seen anything like that yet.
No,
Because
And,
I think the other thing is there's nothing supernatural about it.
no.
So of all the post-apocalyptic events that happen in book 2 and book 3 for that matter, it's sadly, obviously, and maybe the most believable thing that would probably happen if something like this, if a plague swept through the world.
And it happens so suddenly. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just rounding the corner, and all of a sudden, guns are going off, and then you're with these, the women that.
I mean, that's horrifying, but I feel like what's more horrifying is the actual zoo itself.
No, that's what I'm
yeah,
talking
absolutely.
about.
No,
that's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
That is so believable to me that, again, like Allison touched on earlier, these privileged men who now and now in addition to that have all this control now. They've got the guns. They've got the toxic masculinity, which I will. All right, fine, come at me. Toxic masculinity, and they're in control, and they have these women.
And they're just drugging them and keeping them just cognizant enough to, move around, but not be able to fight back. And they abuse them. And it also is the introduction of a couple of characters that I really love and wish we could have seen more of in Sue and
Dana.
Oh, Dana, I love Dana. But wow, yeah.
Yeah, Susan has a pretty vivid account when she's explaining to them exactly what happened, and it's very alarming how forthcoming she is because you can tell that she hasn't been able to tell anyone. It's such a unremarkable situation, or such a remarkable situation that this is. I cannot, good Lord, it was only a month ago that she probably was living its normal life. And then all of a sudden, the way she describes this, and it's pretty dark, but I feel like it should probably be going to. Yeah. So on page 691, she says, "I get up in the morning, be raped 2 or 3 times, and then wait for Doc to hand out the pills," Susan said, matter-of-factly. "The daytime pills, I mean. By the 3rd day, I had abrasions on my vagina, and any sort of normal intercourse was very painful. I used to hope for Ronnie, because all Ronnie ever wanted was a blowjob. But after the pills, you got very calm. Not sleepy, just calm. Things didn't seem to matter after you got yourself wrapped around a few of those blue pills. All you wanted to do was sit with your hands in your lap and watch the scenery go by, or sit with your hands in your lap and watch them use the record and move something out of the way. One day Garvey got mad because this one girl, she couldn't have been any more than 12. She wouldn't do, well, I'm not going to tell you. It was that bad. So Garvey blew her head off. I didn't even care. I was just calm. After a while, you almost stopped thinking about escape. What you wanted more than anything more than getting away were those blue pills. Dana and Patty Kroger were nodding. It's like, and again, 4 weeks ago there was Society.
So quickly it falls apart.
Well, it's also, but the thing that's also really scary about it is that shit's probably was going on before the plague too. You know what I mean? Like that shit goes on all the time.
Yeah.
And you just don't hear about it. You know, it's just sick. You know.
Yeah.
I will say two things and nothing else because you guys have this covered. The first is that everyone should watch The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. It's now like the third time I've brought this up on the podcast, but it is really important. And it explores what's explored kind of in miniature here in greater detail. And it is incredibly relevant to the place that we're at today. So that is what I will say. The second thing I will say is that it is unexpectedly dusty in here, but I am very happy and proud to be recording this podcast with three dudes who, when asked to choose the scariest thing in book 2 of this book, went with that. It means a lot, and it's great. So...
Yeah, I mean, again,
there we
it's
go.
just...
Rotating female panelists says thumbs up to you all.
Well, actually, my first choice was Trash becoming a weasel, but I was just joking.
I was going to jokingly start with the kid. Yeah. No, but seriously though, I mean, I you know, I'm reading this, and this is something that's left out of the miniseries. And going back, I was really surprised when this came around because this is one of the few things that is totally left out, and I was not aware it happened in the book. So I was very surprised when we got to it, and so not only was I surprised, but I had, out of all the things that happened in this book, and another cemetery thing where we see Mother Abigail when she returns, which is disgusting, but. I had the most visceral reaction to this. Like I was uncomfortable reading it, and I was just like, and I was like, well, no wonder this didn't make it to TV, you know. Yeah. But
ABC execs were probably like, hey, Steven, we need to
maybe we should
cut
this
these
whole
3
scene,
pages
you know?
here.
Mick was very upset. You know, they shot a lot of that, but no.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I just said I wasn't going to speak anymore, but I'm really glad to know that. I appreciate when an adaptation maybe knows its limits. Like, I haven't seen this miniseries yet, but I'm pretty sure that maybe they weren't in a position to tackle the reality of sexual and gendered violence.
I mean, if this was on HBO today,
I think you should do it now.
HBO still gets it wrong sometimes. But
well, I just mean...
Like on Game of Thrones.
I mean, we would probably see it.
Oh, yes,
you know,
absolutely.
but in the 90s on ABC or whatever, they weren't doing it.
Like,
They were getting away with a lot.
Today on ABC, that wouldn't be there.
Again, we're talking about the miniseries, but...
It's like an hour after Full House airs or something.
That's right, yeah. Coming up, Larry's in the tunnel on the stand.
Any more zoo thoughts? Or
Oh, I just got to do it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
ABC executives were looking at the script, and they got to a point where there was the routine and habitual rape of female characters, including a 12-year-old girl. And the executive looks up and says to the men in charge, "This scene, you've got to cut it out."
Oh, yikes.
Nailed it.
Dan, are you listening?
Dan's going to love it.
Dan
That
is
was for
so
you, Caffrey.
super TGIF fan. Dan Caffrey is so jealous right now that he's not here
I
to
know.
share his TGIF
We should just keep
tales.
talking about. No, I'm just kidding.
Caffrey's going to rewind that again.
That's my personal cemetery. That's my scariest thing. Is talking about that for hours.
We may
I'm
not,
guessing that Caffrey is actually going to underscore this whole mini section with the theme from Full
Oh, I
House.
hope so. I hope so.
I hope when Dan's editing this, he just stops, and then all of a sudden it's just Dan talking for like 30 minutes about
he could just
TGIF.
he could just find a clip online of TGIF.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, right.
we may not know the most about Stephen King, but we promise we can transition from information about the zoo into a fun conversation about TGIF on ABC's old Friday night lineup.
Was Family Matters part of the TGIF lineup?
Yeah.
I believe
Fun
so.
fact: my wedding ended with the theme song for Family Matters.
Oh boy.
Fun fact: did you know that Stephen Urkel became Stefan?
Oh, I did.
Because of a machine. And did you know originally that show was more believable than that?
Yeah.
Fun fact: did you know that my partner and his best friend, who are big fans of the Portland Trailblazers, call C.J. McCollum the Stefan Urkel of basketball?
Ooh, I like that.
I'm happy you
that.
mentioned the Blazers. Let's go off on a little tangent here. If you don't mind.
Here we go. Hey, we got John
Allison-
Carpenter over here.
Allison, if you have to, who's a super Laker fan,
I know.
love John Carpenter. Allison, if you had to decide between Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, who are you keeping on the Trailblazers, and who are you going to try to trade away? Who is the future of that franchise?
Oh, I don't think they're. First of all, I don't think they're trading. Either
Oh,
of
I
them.
think they might have to get rid of one of them.
Well, not Dame Lillard.
Okay, you're
He's
going to
not
keep
going
Dame.
anywhere.
No, they're gonna keep
He
him.
is committed to being like first of all like a franchise linchpin.
Agreed.
I think he probably really likes the idea of that. Second, Portland loves him, and
Mm-hmm.
he loves Portland. True story. He lives in Portland full time
Oh.
with his mother.
Oh,
That's great.
Yeah, no, so does CJ. CJ also lives with his mother.
He's trying to live up to Lillard
But
standards.
Dame's not going anywhere. But I also love CJ. Fun fact: I saw the very first minutes that CJ McCollum ever played in the NBA. Because after he got drafted, he got hurt, so he never played. So then the next season, it was their game, I think, against the Heat. So I think it was the first NBA game I ever saw. And I saw his first 5
my
minutes
boys.
of play. He only played about 5 minutes, and he made a 3. So I feel like I saw the beginning of a great story.
Fun fact: I love sports. And earlier I said my personal cemetery was talking about TGIF. I was wrong. I was dead wrong.
about the
It's
NBA.
talking about sports while trying to talk about scary
I'll
things
just
in
say
King
this:
books. But
we won't do this anymore. But if you're a person who's like, man, you know what? I wish this podcast had more of banter about the Portland Trailblazers. I encourage you to follow Justin and I on Twitter.
Yes, that's
It's
right.
pretty much the only way
yeah.
we interact is that we banter about
Like,
the Portland Trailblazers.
I love when Dane destroyed Dwight Howard's Rockets in the buzzer beater 2 years ago. Anyway,
and if you really want to
we hate Dwight Howard here at the podcast as well.
Well, who doesn't?
If you want incessant manic tweets about the Miami Heat, you can follow me on there also when I sporadically sprout out 30 tweets about the same play, and then just vanish.
yeah, and if you want to see tweets every 6 months, follow me. Where
None of them will be about
none of them will
sports.
be about sports. It might be something randomly. No,
That was a good sandwich. Matt
Exactly.
Gerber.
Yeah. Justin likes to tease me about sports all the time. He'll wait till we're in a crowded elevator and start asking me about the game last night, and I'll just it's just the most blanket. I'll go as long as I can saying the most general things like, well, you could see it coming, and just trying to get around it. But
So again, wow, we went from the zoo to TGIF to the Portland Trailblazers. So hey, speaking of transitions, let's transition right back into the cemetery.
Yeah.
Who wants to go next with some more horrifying moments from book 2?
I got one.
Okay.
We had mentioned Nadine with the Ouija board
Yes.
before. I'm not going to go there yet. I'm going to let someone else take that one.
boy.
One scene that really was jarring to me. And once again, I'm opening up the book and I'm going to read a part of it. You love that. It's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I didn't even need to read it before coming here.
It's a scene where Nadine is going back to her house to pick up her things for one last time, and sees Joe sitting there, and it's not Leo anymore; it's Joe.
Oh right.
And she's trying to basically stick up for her decision and say like, no, you have Larry and Lucy. You don't need them. You don't need them. You don't need me. Just go with them. You're gonna be fine. And he's just sitting there and just watching from the darkness in the corner and just staring her down. And it's just these judgmental eyes that she keeps describing. And this sequence right here, there's a few lines here that are just really terrifying. Nadine backed out awkwardly and stood on the top step for a moment, trying to gather her wits. It suddenly occurred to her that the whole thing might have been a hallucination, brought on by her own guilt feelings. Guilt at abandoning the boy, guilt at making Larry wait too long, guilt at the things she and Harold had done, and the much worse things which were waiting. Perhaps there had been no real boy in that house at all, no more real than the phantasms of Poe, the beating of the old man's heart, sounding like a watch wrapped in cotton, or the raven perched on the bust of Apollos. Tapping, ever tapping at my chamber door, she whispered aloud without thinking, and that made her utter a horrid, croaking little giggle. Probably not much different from the sounds of ravens actually made. Still, she had to know. And then she talks about how she looks inside the room back in the house just to make sure that he was actually in there. And after describing the whole house, King says, and sitting in the corner chair, some dead woman's little boy, clad only in his underpants, sitting, still sitting, as he had sat before. Nadine fled. And it's just like,
Well, that's unnerving.
it's really creepy. It's like one of those, some of my scariest moments in life have been. I always used to say, you know, people always say, oh, there's no such thing as ghosts. You're never going to see ghosts, blah, blah. I feel like the times you are going to see something is when you are either leaving the house or you think you go, oh, let me grab something real quick. And you go back in and then you see something. And just that tension of wanting to get out of there as soon as possible just really, it just like chilled me to the bone. And that sequence just like, I could not shake that image of just that kid just sitting in the corner in the pitch black, you know, like living room. Just, it creeped me out.
Another sweet treat.
No, very sweet. Yeah. Not very sweet treat. That's actually kind of gross, but yeah.
You know, my pick is actually kind of similar in tone, which is a sequence we've already kind of referenced but not really talked about, which is the tornado.
Oh, yeah.
And as great as them running and Nick somehow being stunned into inaction and Tom saving his life, all of that is really great. But the chunk that really gets me, there's a favorite line and a favorite paragraph, and they're not the same. So here's the first. Tom had not stopped to inventory the damage. He was fleeing the barn as if the devil himself was at his heels. He looked back just once, his eyes huge and almost comically terrified. Nick could not resist a look back over his shoulder and into the storm cellar. The stairs pitched and yawed downward into shadow, old wood splintered and sunken in the center of each riser. He could see littered straw on the floor and two sets of hands protruding from the shadow. The fingers had been stripped down to the bone by rats. If there was anyone else down there, Nick did not see him, nor did he want to. And that there's another paragraph I really love, but it's kind of got a little like wah in the middle because of a random Predator reference.
Oh yeah,
it does.
Which just like spoils the whole paragraph.
Obviously an update.
Yeah.
But the sentence that really makes this whole sequence for me, where they sense Flag's presence in the tornado, and then they're in the cellar, and there are bodies down there, and the bodies don't bother them. What bothers them is the sense that something or someone is down there with them. After they emerge, the line that actually gets me, the one that made shivers go up and down my spine, was someone was in there, Tom said abruptly.
Yeah, it's a very
someone was in there. That it's the confirmation of what you're trying to convince yourself is your own paranoia.
I just got chills.
Right?
Yeah,
because
great.
it's all scary, but it's not
simple.
truly frightening until someone was in there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, it reminds me of Halloran in the attic in The Shining.
Yeah.
When
The
he
lighting,
sensed something in there,
Something's off,
and
yeah.
he just can't tell, and he just leaves the whole like attic door open without even gets reprimanded by Ullman. Yeah, I love that, and that's when King, those stingers work so well. I love it.
It's so good.
I agree with everything. The three moments you mentioned are terrific, and I could even go into the whole Weasels cornering Mother Abigail, and my blood is in your fist, where she hears Flag saying that. But I don't want to get too smarmy here, but who cares? Here we go. The most terrifying part of book 2 for me is anytime the Justice League of America gets together. AKA the Permanent Free Zone Housing fucking Committee gets together. Because there's nothing worse than when you realize... I mean, look, there's nothing worse when you... There we go. But when you are at the halfway point of an epic novel and you are loving this book so far, you're like, I can't believe how great this is. We're burning through. And now we're going to spend time with these, at this point, like these superheroes, essentially. Talking about, going back to what you said earlier about Glenn. I love the moments where it's just, especially when it's just like Glenn and Stu talking, especially when they first meet and talking about the world as it is and the world as it was. I find minutes of meetings very boring. And this is absolutely no exception. And so you think you're just going to get that one chapter, like, from the Journal of Franny Goldsmith. That's fine, whatever. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And now we're going to keep pouring in about writing thank you letters.
Yeah.
And let's go about it this way so we get X involved in the committee and keep X out. Like, this could have been condensed so much, like into a short moment of a chapter. And we're talking about large swaths of book 2, namely the last third of book 2 is just this weird, again, I talked about it earlier, but I cannot express enough how much I have a problem with focusing on like this near utopia and how uninteresting it is for me. So basically, at this point in the book, personally, in terms of like my skin crawling, was thinking to myself, "Oh my God, am I going to be stuck in a loop of reading about somebody's objections to something going on in a meeting for the next 300 pages? I got 700 pages left of this book, and every time I read it, I always forget about this moment in the book. I guarantee, in 6 years, I will forget about this. I will forget about these meetings, and I will start reading the book again, thinking, "Oh, this is even better than I remember it being." And I'll get to that italics at the top of the chapter that says from the minutes at the ad hoc committee meeting, and I'll just say, "Oh my God, the loop is complete." So I can't. I mean, book 2 for me is the least of the 3 books, and it's because of
The minutes.
Just there's terror in the zoo. There's terror in the tornado. There's terror all over the place. But my God, the terror of reading boring passages in a long book. Nothing comes close. There's my soapbox. I've been waiting to say this for like 4 months. How boring this is.
Boy.
So there's my terror. There's my terror.
Justin, I love that you've discovered the literary equivalent of this didn't need to be a meeting. This could have been an email.
Yes, and this was unfortunately. Maybe if this was written now, it would be like. So they got the electricity up and running enough to write an email about the ratification of the
Reply
Constitution.
all. Reply all.
Ad
Reply
hoc. Let's put it to a vote. Email me personally. Keep up the CCs. You know,
It's a Slack transcript.
So there we go. Any other?
Truly
again, I think Mike, you touched
Horrifying.
upon this. You touched upon in book 1, Mike. You touched upon the fact that really book 1 is where the most horrific moments are, and where book 2 and 3 they're not as much going on.
No.
I mean, there's one sequence. Do you want to go over it?
Yeah, we could talk about
Let's
it.
do it. Let's pull the Ouija board out.
Oh wait, you know what? Before we get to the Ouija board, I want to let somebody know out there. Randall Colburn. Okay, hey, guess what?
Oh no, here we go.
Speaking of Ouija boards, you're damn right. Ouija: Origin of Evil was started off pretty good, but it ends really bad.
The
All right,
scary
Randall?
parts are
I'm coming
good.
back. I heard the last episode, Randall.
In Randall's defense, the scary parts are scary.
Absolutely, like the parts where you see the entity off in the hallway,
Great.
unexplained,
Great.
But then here comes the CGI. Randall will talk again about this, but I did listen to the last episode. I want to let you know. But anyway, who wants to talk about Nadine and the Ouija board?
Yeah, speaking of, and again, this is, I don't like how Nadine's, trajectory is just set in stone. Mm-hmm. But I did love this little bit of backstory, which was new to me as a reader, about Nadine when she's younger and her experience with this Ouija board and how it just got under my skin. I've never been one that's been like frightened of the Ouija board. I know a lot of people are. No, seriously though. I think I remember having a conversation with my mom, and I think she just didn't want it in the house, and it was one of those first instances to me where that solidified, like, well, maybe there is something in my closet, Mom. Like it was like, why they didn't want this stupid game that, like, it's just supposed to be like a game, in the house. It just like it gave this otherworldliness to it, and I think I also saw The Exorcist that year, and I started getting really scared of religious things, which I think is also what's very scary to me about this book is religion and how scary it can actually be if religion is legit. Nadine, how I love my Nadine, to love my Nadine, to be my queen. If you are pure for me, if you are clean for me, if you are dead for me, you are. So that's the Ouija board. As scary as I remember.
Yeah. Well, it's all in caps and italicized.
But also, I love that. I love to love Nadine. Yeah. I love that line, and it creeped me out.
It reminded me honestly, that little segment reminded me of something from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Which scary stories?
Well, the
oh, you just mean in general?
It just reminded me
of
the
that little snippet of a story.
Like Lati Dati Walker or something.
Meetai Doti Walker, excuse me.
Okay, yeah. The one with the Dr. Lewis.
Is that Lynchy, Kinchy, Kali Wally, Dingo?
Yeah.
If honestly though, if I do have a feeling a lot of our listeners have read the Alvin Schwartz collection of short stories, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. But if you have not, even though they were terrifying as an 8-9-year-old, some of those still hold up today. I can't believe I was allowed to read those.
And if you haven't read it, definitely check out George Irving's audio versions of those stories.
We did recently.
Equally as entertaining and pretty frightening.
And most are found on YouTube. So just Google Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. and enjoy.
We went down that rabbit hole over Christmas, and let's just say this guy didn't sleep so well.
There's another, and now correct me if I'm wrong. I read from 2 different books. I read from the Anchor book, but I also read from the illustrated version of The Stand, Stephen King.
That's an awesome edition.
It's a very nice edition. It's pretty much the same thing as the paperback for the most part. I mean, but it's great. However,
it looks great.
The departure of the Scouts, is that in book 2 where they go off? I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
it's right.
It is.
Yeah. I think it's at the end of book 2, right?
This this is a different kind of scary, and Stephen King's really good at doing this, and he did this a lot in Salem's Lot, where he ends the chapters with this little kind of poignant sentence where he kind of foreshadows something or blatantly tells you something about the future, which reminds me also of Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, which he does in a brilliant way. But there's a scene where Stu is recounting how Sue comes back. She's been off, and she brings this dog back, and it's this like really fun, like, oh, Adam and Eve, Kojak, and the new dog, the new puppy, and it's all happy. But the end of that chapter just ends with, but it was the morning the 2 of them left Boulder that Stu remembered watching them ride off toward the Denver Boulder Turnpike, because no one in the zone ever saw Dana Jurgens again. And that creeped me out because it also made me really excited to see, like, well, what is going to happen to our Scouts? Like, I just, it just really unnerved me reading that, because up until that point, he hadn't really done a ton of stuff like that in terms of like laying out what happens to a character. Everything's still like really up in the air. But when just saying that just really, and I love Dana. She's great, and she's awesome in book 3. But we'll talk about that later. But I was like, it just put me off. It disturbed me.
What about the change falling out of the corpses? That was
during the big cleanup.
Cordwood.
Yeah, the cordwood. During the cordwood.
Cordwood corpses.
When they talk about how Chad Norris and Kellogg are pulling the dump truck full of the bodies, and they're talking about how Harold heard a sound that would haunt him in his dreams, and that was the sound of change falling from the pockets of the dead men and women as Chad and his helpers worked with their rakes, spreading the corpses evenly. The coins falling on the plastic made a sound that reminded Harold absurdly of tiddlywinks.
One more time, Mike. What was that?
Tiddlywinks.
Okay, I want to make sure we got that on record.
Sickly, sweet stench of corruption drifted up in the warm air. The sickly, the wickedly talented
Nadel Dazine. Another scary thing I thought was, Mother Abigail makes a lot of pies, and she describes she's making, strawberry rhubarb pie, my favorite, apple pie, cherry pie. These things are going to waste. They're sitting there on the sill, cooling off on the sill, and that is a tragedy. That was a scary.
That is,
she leaves, and I was wondering, like, who did they eat all that pie? Did they get to finish it? I doubt it. She's making pies all day.
Well, if Ralph Brenner came in and was looking for, he probably was eating the pies.
Can I suggest that is an appropriate point?
Absolutely. I was going to say, you know what? We've been dining. We've had courses upon courses upon courses. I think our dinner is done. It's time to set up the coffee and have a little pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Okay, well, who wants to serve us our first slice?
Ugh, gross.
That's disgusting.
Well, I got a long list, but so if anyone wants to go first.
I only have really one entry, so I'll go. On the, I think it's 1017 on the paperback. There's a mention of oil slick and drippy dick.
What's the context?
Out of context. I have no clue what the context is.
You have the notes there.
I think I took a picture of this with my phone when I was reading it, because I normally let Dan have his day and Mike, but the drippy dick was just too. I couldn't pass it up.
Okay, well, I guess before we get into the heavy servings of the pound cake, this isn't so much about sex as it is about sexuality, and it's when God bless him, when Stu is saying goodbye to Susan and Dana. Please listen to the following.
Oh, here we go.
Out of nowhere, we are literally over 1,000 pages into the novel at this point. He waved and they pulled over. He thought he had never seen Dana looking prettier. Her hair was tied behind her with a bright green silk scarf, and she was wearing a rawhide coat open over jeans and a chambray shirt. A bedroll was strapped on behind her. "Stuart!" she cried and waved to him, smiling. "Lesbian?" he thought doubtfully. A lesbian is in italics, by the way, so I did not embellish that. "I understand you're off on a little trip," he said. "For sure, and you never saw me." "Nope," Stu said. "Never did." "Smoke?" Blah, 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 blah. "Take care of Franny, blah, 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 blah." She smiled. Oh, I'm sorry. She looked at him, and Stu planted a soft kiss on her mouth. "Good luck." That's not very fair. He actually probably says something like, "Good luck." She smiled. "You have to do it twice for really good luck. Didn't you know that?" He kissed her again, more slowly and thoroughly this time. "Lesbian?" he wondered again. What? It's just like the most goofy. I mean, I know it's 1976, 77, whenever he wrote this, but it's just very goofy and how aloof Stu is when it comes to how a lesbian would act or and whatnot. I don't know. That just really stood out to me. And my notes was just lesbian in caps in the page numbers.
I don't know how things were in Arnett, Texas back then.
I'll tell you what, they probably. 70s. I can guarantee. I would guarantee today that Arnett, Texas, would not be very tolerant of lesbians. If there's any Arnett, Texas listeners out there, I apologize, but we'll call it what it is.
I've got a teeny tiny slice.
Ooh.
But it gets bonus points for being physiologically wrong.
Right.
So this is during the Joe/Leo discovery of musical prodigy abilities, right? And it comes after the lyric by the whackin' on my black cat bone, which I think is appropriate. The boy's open, delighted grin lit those eyes up, made them into something, Larry realized, that would be apt to make the muscles in any young girl's thighs loosen a little. You know, I had many a crush on many a delighted young person when I was a young person, and I never was like, "Oh, my thighs are loose."
Oh,
wow!
What's this
I just
feeling?
sensed this loosening of my thighs.
What?
That must mean that I'm attracted. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Usually, it's like, "Oh my god, I'm terrified. I like it." And then no, there's no thigh loosening.
Yeah, I'll liken that to the weak in the knees thing.
What?
I never.
Oh well, see, that's more like. It's physiological, but not really, because it's short of breath, lightheaded, weak in the knees, etc.
So no thigh reaction?
No, it's like, well, I'm assuming what he's suggesting is that the thighs are looser, so they're more likely to spread. But like,
that's even more.
Can you imagine if he gave it more descriptive there?
It's even more pound cakey.
Yeah, it's just real gross. Yeah, but hey, apparently,
and you know what, Allison?
He had a real delighted grin.
That's why we have our rotating female panelists.
Yeah, the next female panelist, that is me,
Who will
might
be
have
you?
a different opinion.
Yeah, because I when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, they probably are. Like,
that's right. I was born to believe that.
These two hunks playing guitar, it's like.
I sort of wish that there actually was a rotating panel of female guests who were all named Allison, so that you couldn't actually tell the difference between those. I should just try to adopt a different alter every time I'm on the show.
Salison Alemaker or something like that?
Yeah, Salison Alemaker.
All right, boys.
That's my drag name, actually.
Mike's been
all right.
really quiet.
We've got our forks and knives ready, Mike.
Here we go.
All right.
Serve it up.
I'm glad you had a taste of the pound cake, and now that you're ready for, what Chubba Rothman, when I was younger, used to look forward to 4 or 5 pieces of birthday cake.
Well, I'll tell you what, my thighs are loosening just hearing you talking about
my
this.
thighs are pliant.
Let me tell you this: you're gonna get the whole bakery of pound cake. On page 515, and this is all going to be from the Anchor Books edition.
515. What we got? Like
515. Oh, we're going all the way back. We're going all the way back, baby. 518, when Nick Andros sleeps with Julie. And Alice actually already hinted at this one before. He, which is Nick, put his hands out, perhaps meaning to take her by the shoulders, but he found her breasts instead. That was the end of any resistance he might have had. Coherent thought left his mind as well. He lowered her to the floor and had her.
I just want to say, if you accidentally touch my breasts when you're attempting to touch my shoulders, which first of all, don't do either of those things to a woman you don't know. But if you're going for the shoulder and you touch the boob accidentally, quote unquote, I'm going to accidentally kick you in the nuts really hard.
Maybe
or non-accidentally.
Maybe she jumped up in the air and
That's my joke too.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense.
She was throwing the first pitch of the baseball game.
It's like King forgot. It was like, oh wait, no, he can see.
He can't hear her talk. But he can see. This
Well,
is
you're probably while you're running, while you're reading, you're probably wondering like, well, King, come on, don't leave me in the dark. Usually, you tell us how the breasts are, how they are. And of course, two pages later, he does. Hi, y'all, Jolie trilled and ran down the street toward Tom, her breasts bouncing sweetly under her tight midi top. Tom's goggle had been big to begin with. Now it grew bigger still. Like, okay.
that just makes me
His
sad because I know
goggle was almost as big as her sweetly bouncing breath.
that makes me sad though because I know that the next part is going to be about the whole Pepto Bismol thing. I'm getting sad again.
Oh no! I'm not doing any more. I skipped the
jumping
Pepto.
here.
I'm going to 603, and we're talking about some weird fluids involving Mother Abigail. This is a long segment right here, but basically says, and sometimes at the instant of her climax, she would think of the corn, the bland corn with its roots planted not deep but wide. She would think of flesh and then the corn. When it was all over and her husband laid beside her, the sex smell would be in the room. The smell of the spunk the man had shot into her. The smell of the juices she made to smooth his way. And it was a smell like husked corn, mild and sweet, a goodish smell.
Let me tell you, if there's one character you want to hear that about, it's Mother Abigail.
Honestly, some of that's kind of nice imagery, and then it gets to the spunk part, and then you're kind of I don't know.
I suspect if any fluid coming out of you smells like corn, you should
Check your diet.
immediately start drinking water and really try to rebalance your diet.
Yeah, tighten those thighs and
rethinking. Mother, no mention of her thighs loosening, but
but they do have mention of her bowel movements and plenty because she's old.
She's human.
Let the old woman have her God. God was as necessary for old women as enemas and Lipton tea bags.
Now hold on. I work at a place where there's a lot of Lipton tea bags for people of all ages, and I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know where King's coming from with that. Maybe 1976, 77 was a different era.
It must have been.
He gets a nickel for every time that somebody reads the word Lipton.
There you go.
Yeah, well,
you should do the James Lipton biography. He'll get a lot of.
I like Lipton iced tea. Reminds me of tennis. So on page 644, this is actually Caffrey's favorite. Abigail's eyes noted the way Ralph squired June over to the wrecker so she could look at the radio equipment and approved. The woman had a good set of hips on her. There would be a fine porch door down there between them. She could have just about as many little ones as she wanted. Porch door.
A fine porch door?
Porch door.
Porch door.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard that expression before. Anybody here? Porch door?
You only find a porch door on a really loose porch.
Make sure we got that on record. Oh boy, yeah, these are great, Mike. I want to point out Mike's notes, by the way. There's bullet points for all these page numbers, and then for pound cake, there's actually an exclamation point after pound cake.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty nice.
We go to 707 for Harold's fantasies, and we all know Harold loves those fantasies, or he has some. At age 16, he had given up Burroughs and Stevenson and Robert Howard in favor of other fantasies that were both well-loved and much hated. Not of rockets or pirates, but of girls in silk see-through pajamas, kneeling before him on satin pillows, while Harold the Great lolled naked on his throne, ready to chastise them with small leather whips, with silver-headed canes. They were bitter fantasies through which every pretty girl at Algonquin High School had strolled at one time or another. These daydreams always ended with a gathering expletive in his loins, an explosion of seminal fluid that was more curse than pleasure, and then he would sleep, the sperm drying to a scale on his belly. Every doggy has his day.
I think that's more about Harold being
a creep.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's a creep.
Not to shame him for his sexual proclivities, but I'll shame him for his.
I'll shame him for the idea that all the women he meets should service him.
Oh, that's very true. And then the S&M description is interesting.
King's just really interested in fluids,
Yeah.
And now, if you're talking about like a tube neck corpse and you want to throw some fluids in there, sure. But Really? I mean,
Spunk, seed, and seed. The three S's for Stephen King.
The only fluid I want to talk about right now is this crisp cerveza that Matt and I are both drinking.
Ooh.
We like alcohol.
That's got an
here.
S in it too. El Sully.
El Sully.
Well, the next one comes from Justin's favorite character, Kid, on page 736.
Wait, can I read this?
Oh yeah, you want to read it? Go for it. Page.
I'll do my best.
He'll get it all wrong. I bet.
Oh, you get to, this is a good one. Go right here.
Which one is that, Mike? I got
Right
the- I
here,
got the-
736.
All right. Here's my best Kid impersonation. Ready?
Oh
There you
boy.
go. Don't get too close to the mic.
Yeah.
Where's the Playboy channel? That was a good one, Trashy. I mean, they never showed guys getting right down eating their hair pie, munching the old bearded clam, you know what I mean? But some of those ladies had legs that went right up to their chins. You know what the motherfucker I'm talking about?
So when we do inevitably our casting of The Stand,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I want to make it clear right now that there is this role is taken. It's not available. I'm really, really sorry, Eddie Redmayne. It's not available.
Eddie Redmayne.
The great Eddie Murphy. Would it be funny if I
Dan
It's gonna be.
Stevens.
It's gonna be.
Wouldn't it be
Jeff.
funny if I did the audiobook for this and I just read everybody with my normal voice, man or woman, and then but except for the kid, all of a sudden it's like this root toot toot and wild.
Actually,
wilderness.
Justin, that would be actually really true to the book because it's that out of place.
It's hey, there you go. Hey, look, hey, back off the kid, all right? He's a weird guy.
You know, it's also, speaking of weird, more bowel movements with Mother Abigail. She talks about she had her little accidents from time to time too, as old folks often did. But as long as she could do her own wash, those accidents didn't have to be anybody's business but her own. Oh, that's kind of nice. But, on 862, we get to hear about someone's skid marks. And this is, if you want to talk about, bringing a character down a notch or two, here's a good way to do that. They're your clothes too, Mr. Stuart Redman. You may be a founding father and all that, but you still leave an occasional skid mark in your underdrawers.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't. I mean,
No, that's
do we need to
It's
hear?
the
pound
forerunner
cake,
to
but-
Everybody Poops, the classic children's book.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Pretty much. Oh yeah, this is a weird one also. So on age 65, Franny's watching them, or Franny's doing laundry, and
Right.
King writes, a pair of blue jeans floated to the surface, and he stomped them back down. This is Stu in there, sending a creamy squirt of soap suds onto the lawn. Franny thought, it looks a little like, no, away with that. Away with that unless you want to laugh yourself into a miscarriage.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
These two are definitely enjoying the honeymoon phase. I think Stu and
my
Franny have
God.
sex at least 7 times in like a 20-page.
I've never wanted to be
section.
Stuart Franny more in book 2, where
Living it up.
every conversation they have, whether it's an argument or just any kind of passing, like, hey, did you put that in the fridge? Hey, are you wearing anything under that dress? And then they're
It very
upstairs
much
doing
is
it
that.
every single scene.
Well, there's just a page before that I almost missed over this one. This is a little stinger between Stu and Franny. And then he was doing things to her. Even on the stairs, he was doing things to her, making her naked, making her hot, making her love him. That ends the chapter.
Making her love him.
That sounds like a ZZ Top lyric.
I know. You'll see that ZZ Top song soon. We'll record that and put that up.
That was ZZ Top with Making Her Naked.
Well, if you actually thought that it was going to be just Mother Abigail with the bowel movements, no. This is Stephen King we're talking about here. Franny, when she's talking about her, we were talking earlier about things that happen when we're either turned on or scared or whatnot. Apparently, Franny has a little bowel movement problem when she gets scared. Whoever she is, I hope she's no better at locks than I am, Franny thought, and then had to squeeze both hands over her mouth to stop an insane bray of laughter. That was when she looked down at her cotton slacks and saw how badly she had been frightened. At least she didn't scare the shit out of me, Franny thought. At least not yet. The laughter bubbled up again, hysterical and frightened, just below the surface. My note for that was, good God. And then, literally a page later, King doubles down and writes, next time you go housebreaking, Francis, Rebecca, remember to wear your continence pants. I mean, like why is he so obsessed with this? Like, how many times do you think about shitting your pants? Like, I don't.
Maybe he was eating clam chowder at the time and was having some stomach issues, and he's in Maine.
Maybe in books at the time, people just weren't writing about that, and in order to make them feel human, he felt like, well, I don't think people are connected to these characters, so we don't see them eating ever. We don't see them do. Maybe we need to see them shitting and talking about that for a little while,
or at least have them thinking about shitting at the very least.
You all ready for another sex stinger?
Oh boy!
Please.
On page 919, we're almost done. I mean, we've had a lot of pound cake. I'm starting to get a little
full,
a little diabetic.
I've got diabetes now.
Yeah. Okay, so on page 919. Okay, fine, Stu said and joined her on the bed. Say, what are you wearing under that shirt? A big, strong man like yourself should be able to find that out with any help, Fran said primly. And King says, it turned out to be nothing.
Whoa! Yowzers!
Dot.
Oh boy, King, you dog.
Yeah. And then there's that whole weird thing where Stu wants Franny to stand up and have everyone see her. That was kind of weird. That's on page 939.
Wait. Isn't that during the meeting?
Yeah, it's during the meeting.
That's
He just says,
he's just
I
proud
want
of
you
her.
to stand up. I want everybody to see in your pretty dress.
Yeah.
That's
Stand up, Franny. Let him see you.
know, that's pound cake.
I guess. Could you imagine? All right, let's change the situation then. Let's imagine that Stu's up there, and then he's like,
drinking
a beer.
stand up, Franny. Let me see what you look like out of the dress on. Like,
well, yeah, I think it was
if
like
he was standing up there drinking a beer and belligerently saying, "Hey, Franny, stand up! I want to see how pretty you
well,
are."
apparently you all haven't seen
Oh,
Rashomon.
see, I'm with you. I would have preferred it if Stu had said something like, "Oh, stand up, Franny. Let everybody see you in your intelligence and capability."
And remember how smart you are. That is true.
Look, it's a little, it's a little much. And then the last one is, it's kind of a letdown. I don't know why I went with these last two. I apologize, everyone. This is when we start purging the pound cake.
Hey, we're talking about the Stand Complete and Uncut. Now this is the Losers Club podcast, uncut. So what is it?
We got to hear it, Mike.
Well, at one point, the judge says,
oh, wow, this must be something.
Maybe that's good.
He goes, my bowels will not work properly. I'll be lonely. I'll miss my begonias. But he looked up at Larry and his eyes gleamed in the dark. I'll also be clever. Like, again, great scene with the judge leaving. And obviously Larry and the judge have a little bond there.
I really love that scene, actually.
I love that scene, too. But King can't let that great scene go by without a mention of bowel movements in the pants again.
Well, all of that pound cake, I have to admit, King was right and I was wrong. My thighs have been loosened.
There you go.
I felt a loosening.
Was it the
in my
bowel
thighs.
movements that set you off?
It was definitely, it was that last one. It pushed me right over the edge.
Thanks, Judge.
Well, that concludes.
I'm not going to be able to walk because my knees aren't weak, but my thighs are like...
Well, listen, everybody, our thighs are loosened, but we've had our fill of pound cake.
I don't even need to use this aluminum foil to wrap it all up.
Yeah, there's nothing left, folks.
There's nothing left.
Not even crumbs.
Yeah.
So I think it's about time to enter into the world of King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
Okay, Mac, I know we've talked about this quite a lot, but you have some interesting theories about the book itself and where it relates to the rest of King's universe.
I do, and so I've got some King's Dominion stuff here, but I'll wait to talk about that. But first off, I want to start with the Dark Tower connection that I think is here, and I don't think I'm crazy, but the Path of the Rat.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Dark Tower series, we have different paths of the beam, which is another reference I'll bring up in a second. But the paths of the beam, I think it takes place on the Path of the Turtle.
Yes.
There's a lot of references to the turtle, and we'll see that when we get there. And the Path of the Bear is what Roland's on in in the Dark Tower. The Path of the Rat, and I started thinking about this because I was like, well, what path are we on here? And there was something that just kept the rat just kept coming up in this novel, and I wasn't looking for it, but it just kept coming up, and I thought this is really, really strange. And I'm going to bring a couple things back from book one because I wasn't here for that. But book one, Larry notices on page 40 of the Anchor says, the dashboard clock read 6:05. He had been dozing. The rat had been real, he saw. The rat was back. The rat had dug himself quite a hole in the dead cat's guts. He then jokingly chats to the rat as if he'll see him in Yankee Stadium and calls him old chum. So that was the first time. Then page 277, one woman was terrified that rats were going to rise up out of the subways and inherit the earth, reminding Larry uneasily of his own thoughts the day he returned to New York, which is the rat thing we just mentioned. Page 339, his ankles were bare above the prison slippers they gave you to wear. A large, sleek rat was lunching up on Trask's leg, and that was, I think, Lloyd, right? And Lloyd also, hides the rat and eats the rat. Book 2, Glenn mentions on page 416 that the rats were down on the ecological chain but are making a comeback. The hardback that I have, 431, Larry mentions in his dreams that the big aloneness gnaws away at him like some kind of a rat. He keeps bringing up rats, and Larry seems to be haunted by rats. Yeah. Page 549, we've got Joe, or Leo, and Nadine mentions that she found Joe on the lawn, and she thinks that he was sick from a rat bite, she thinks. So there's a lot of rat mentions in the book, and I think the main thing is that when with the new Dark Tower movie coming out, and they were talking about how this is kind of like a pseudo sequel. It's like another round on the wheel of Ka, and that this time that they're on the path of the rat, and that initially put that in my head. So I think rat was in my head, and maybe I'm just pulling these out of my ass, but
no,
I think there's a lot of mention of rats, and it continues, and of course we've got the Rat Man.
The Rat Man himself that appears in this book. Yeah.
Rat Man forgives you.
But moving on to some more King's Dominion, if you don't mind, I'll chat here about some of these. On the paperback, again, Anchor, chapter 28, there's a line of scripture, paraphrase. I think Franny is talking about this. It says, a line of scripture, a paraphrase occurred to her for no good reason. Before removing the mote in the neighbor's eye, attend the beam in thine own. She considered it. Mote? Beam? What sort of beam? Moonbeam? Roof beam? There are also flashlight beams and beaming faces. And there had been a New York mayor named Abe Beam, and we're talking about the beam of the rat or the beams from the Dark Tower. And I thought that was interesting, and I wondered if that was in the cut version, or if it was just this weird, meandering thing about beams. I just thought that was strange. Another kind of almost a nod or mention to Night Shift. I felt like on page 626. They talk about the little girl Gina.
Yeah, I have that.
And she had a broken leg. You want to talk?
No,
about
go for it.
She had a broken leg from playing in a hayloft of a barn. She had dropped 40 feet into some hay and cartwheeled out, breaking her leg, which is very similar to the last rung on the ladder. Yeah. And I wonder if he kind of pulled that from his own. He had already written that, so I wonder if that's a weird. That. Yeah. And I really kind of creeped me out too, because I was just like, ooh, And also with the connectivity of the world, maybe Gina is supposed to be this version of her in this parallel universe, on this beam or whatever.
Interesting.
Which I thought was really interesting. And then my only other, I've got some others, but we'll leave that for a minute. Paperback 632, Mother Abigail references, and this won't be the first time or the last. She references The Shine, and she calls it she says her mother used to reference it as the shining light of God. And I think, and they also obviously start referencing that a lot of people have like this shine. And Justin,
I've got the same note, Mac, and also obviously later on, Leo definitely has the shine. He's the one that informs Larry about Harold and Nadine's plans. So that's kind of set out there too. Those are really the only notes I had. Interesting. That whole thing about the path of the rat is very interesting to me. Great. Actually, compelling. It goes beyond your usual Room 237, did Kubrick fake the moon landing bullshit? But we'll talk about that. I think we've got a little more.
I've got a little Room 237 section here in a minute. All right, go for it.
But Mike, you want to say something first?
I got a great connection that's huge in the Stephen King universe. This is a big whopper. On page 662, Stephen King is weirdly prophetic and has Franny notice that people were wearing a Shit Happens t-shirt. Now you're probably wondering, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, Stephen King talks about shit all the time. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how Stu Redman is played by Gary Sinise, who was in Forrest Gump, who invented
the Shit Happens t-shirt. Well,
Yeah,
what can we say
so-
about that? I mean, that's,
That is Ka. If you really want to go into it.
Oh God! Well, if is that the end of your references? 'Cause I've got
and
some
then
more like that.
Larry, the total number of people in Larry's group is 19, as they say on page 778. Oh, and wow, look at this. There are two stragglers from Pound Cake that were put in my King's Dominion.
boy.
On page 832, Stu talks about slipping deliciously into Franny, and on page 821,
Because her thighs were so loose.
it's true. Her thighs are too loose, and
Deliciously loose.
and Abigail talks about the porta-john and staining her dress. So there's more shit references on that. And 821 if you didn't get enough. But honestly, the only other thing I have, and this is a stretch, and I might have mentioned this in the last episode, is on page 1114. Ralph in the explosion loses some fingers, and it's kind of similar to the number of fingers, or like the way that Roland loses his fingers. Also,
Right.
that's a stretch.
What about room 237?
Room 237?
You're scared of room 237, ain't you?
No, eh?
Mr. Allen, what is in room 237?
Here's a couple of legit ones right out the gate. We got page 704. Franny refers to her child as the Lone Ranger. And we'd also see the Lone Ranger's bike in It as Silver, Hi-Ho Silver Away. She mentions the Lone Ranger a couple of times, and I just thought that was interesting in terms of the connectivity there. Also on page 1101, and I thought this was actually kind of cool, and I wonder if this is real as we get into our Room 237 stuff. Brad Kitchener says, "We had two of the generators going yesterday, and as you know, one of them overloaded and blew its cookies, so to speak. What I mean is that it overlooked. Overloaded, rather. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a definite reference.
So I wondered-
Overlook Hotel.
because the
Yeah.
Overlook
And the
exploded,
generator,
and I thought, the generator, and I thought maybe they purposely did that.
Or the boiler.
So, Stephen, we know you're listening, and just have yet to contact us or
that's
talk
very,
to us yet.
that's pretty cool.
That's a cool
That's a
one.
little
But
fun
Stephen,
joke.
if you were trying to poke fun at the old Shining, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Mission accomplished.
Now I've got some interesting. Fans like to write in. This isn't true, but fans like to write in and give us their conspiracy theories, and I just think that there's some interesting connections here, if you will, and indulge me here. Page 141. Some months later.
Oh, so this is from book one. We're going back.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Some months later, where Colorado Reviver Preacher did a show at Brownsville, the Revival. Anybody?
Oh,
the book
God.
Revival.
Oh, here, this is definitely. Here we go.
All right, hold on.
40 years later.
The hardback version, 184. A man called the Walking Dude, or sometimes the Boogeyman. Now, I actually kind of like that because reading the Boogeyman, I thought that was one of the scariest stories, and it's very possible that Boogeyman is the Walking Dude.
Hey, why not?
Which I think just keeps that real scary. Also, page 69. When the door was closed, he got up and went restlessly to the window, double paned glass and barred on the outside. But it was full dark.
No
Dark, no stars.
Hey.
Let me give you a couple of follow-ups
This
of
is
that.
unbelievable.
Let me give you a couple of follow-ups. Page 614. By the time she reached the place where the tar stopped and the road went to dirt, it was full dark. That's number 2.
God.
And number 3, we've got on 704, Franny's orgasm. By the time they had finished, it was full dark. Is that 3 full dark
you're right.
references?
You
Okay,
know what?
thank you very much.
You're right, man.
I've heard of near dark, but full dark.
Page 273, he also mentions an old Buick. So, Buick,
okay.
from a Buick 8. That's it for my 237 reaching
I
fan
think
theories.
you have said
You've got a lot.
everything and more. To be honest with you, more than enough. More than enough.
But I don't think there's any more legit King's Dominion stuff in book 2.
It's pretty loose.
It's pretty loose,
It's
yeah.
not this. I do like your tenuous ties. So those
I
were
like
a lot
how
of
I
fun.
totally destroy myself there at the end, but I really do think there's something to that rat theory.
I do too.
And I would
That's a
love
cool
to hear if we ever talk to Stephen. I would love to ask him about.
Well, he's obviously listening to this entire thing, so it's important to once
so
again
just reach out. We're
Think of it this way, though. On in the actual Dark Tower, when they do cross over to the stand in the Wastelands, it's a different timeline.
Yeah, you're right.
And they're on the path
of the bear. So it's
So
very
it
very
makes
possible
sense.
they walk through the path of the rat on the way.
Yeah.
Well,
Gotta love the Dark Tower.
This has been very good. Let's give our final thoughts on book 2.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Well, I'll go first, and I'm going to keep it real brief. I love Larry now. I love Larry now. I'm really excited to keep plugging on through book 3. I basically just started it, so I have no idea what's going to happen. And that's always a fun place to be. Don't spoil this shit for me on Twitter, or I will find you and kick you accidentally really hard in the balls. So, anyway, I love Larry. Those are my thoughts.
Mac?
I love it. Now, I've finished at this point, but if we're just mainly talking about book 2,
Yes.
I liked book 2. It's long in the tooth. I mean, it's definitely long, and they definitely go into things a little bit too much. But having said that, I don't know if book 3 would be as effective if it wasn't as long in book 2 in terms of the development and slow burn of these characters. Remains to be seen, but as is, I liked it, and I think that's also why I enjoyed book 3 so much.
Okay.
But that's just me. Oh, I'm gonna give it.
Oh, we're not rating it yet.
I was gonna say.
You put that clown nose away.
Yeah, put that nose away. The Pennywise clown red nose away. All right, Matt. Mike.
One of my favorite attributes of any King book is the sense of camaraderie and teamwork. Something that's going to play into great effect with like It, which is where this podcast gets its namesake. The Body, dozens of books that he's done, and he gets that in book 2. It takes a while, and yes, we have to have minutes that we go through in the meetings, and I agree with you, Justin. I think those are tedious and very long and plotting. But when you really think back at the end of this book about all that was lost and all that was sacrificed, it really does kind of hit you hard, like where those principles were. And when so-and-so does return and you come back and you go, oh my God, like it's not the same anymore. It really isn't. And it's never going to be the same as it was in these moments in book 2, where it is like Utopia. And, yes, Utopia is, Utopia is not very interesting to read about, but it means something when it's gone. And for me, that's the most important part of book 2. And so, that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, for me, again, I think I liked the first half, the short story sections, as you were, much more than the second half. Like I've said my piece on the meetings and whatnot, and I think that structurally I need to have a little bit more of the goings on in Vegas than we get. I think we only get 15 pages in Vegas for that's like 2% of book 2 is in Vegas, and I think it's affected in that way. That being said, I still do enjoy reading about all the Harold stuff and where that character ends up going. I still love the characters that we meet in book 1. I love meeting Tom. Julie, again, we talked about Julie earlier, not the most compelling person. But again, this is the weakest of the 3 for me.
It is.
But again, having read book 3, I understand why you have to keep a lot of book 2 in there. Do you have to keep all of book 2 in there? Absolutely not.
No.
And that's where I stand on The Stand.
Ooh.
Oh.
Book 2. So this has been a good episode, I think. Pretty happy with this so far. Does anybody want to plug anything, Allison?
Well, I've got a new gig I should talk about.
Yeah.
It, like most of my gigs, doesn't pay.
Hey.
But I am the new co-host of Debating Doctor Who, which is the podcast started by a friend of mine and fellow TV critic, Caroline Sita, who I took over for, and Alistair Wilkins, who reviews Doctor Who and Class for the AV Club. He also reviews Arrow, but that's not a part of the Whovian universe. So if you like Doctor Who, and maybe some of you do, I would imagine that some of you do, obsessive fandoms tend to come in, I don't know, threes maybe? They come in groups anyway. Listen to it. It's fun. We just talk about Doctor Who and shit. My very first episode was earlier this week. Well, now it'll be last week when you're listening, but we spent like 40 minutes talking about who the next Doctor could be, and decided in reality we want it to be Phoebe Waller-Bridge from Fleabag, who would be amazing.
Yeah.
But the one that's not going to happen that we were really excited about was Rupert Grint.
Oh boy.
Which would be so funny and weird. Can you imagine a Doctor that was just kind of like awkward, clumsy, like nice
Not the
guy,
go-getter.
and he'd finally be a ginger? That would be great.
The joke in itself.
Right?
What about
So-
Rupert Everett?
Too
I'm bringing
smooth.
it back.
I'd love to
Too
see
smooth.
Olivia Colman.
Oh, I'd love to
I
see
think
her
she'd
too.
be great.
Yes.
Well, and they've both worked with Chris Chibnall, the new showrunner.
Who is the
so,
show? That's right. So we'll see what
they
happens
were both
there.
on Broadchurch. So,
Exciting
yeah.
times ahead.
People keep saying it's going to be Idris Elba, and that's just not going to fucking happen.
It's not going to
it's not
happen.
happening.
It's just not going to happen, folks.
He's rolling.
That's right. He's
in a
or
movie
is
that
he?
we're not sure exists.
Is he
Is
rolling?
that going to happen? Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, if you like Doctor Who, listen to that. That's
Definitely.
my new. That's my
I
new
love-
gig. Also, watch The Handmaid's Tale and read my reviews on the.
I love Who, and I'm going to subscribe. I'm going to return to Hulu for The Handmaid's Tale. I'm looking forward to it. Mac, I know that what we used to do the old Gerber and Gerber video series.
It will come back soon.
We're waiting for it to come back. Hopefully, it'll come back pretty soon on the old YouTube and Consequence of Sound channel. So, but do you want to plug? Mac, my brother's also a pretty good, accomplished musician. You want to plug your stuff on SoundCloud? Go for it. This is the forum.
Oh, well, thanks, Justin.
Yeah,
I think it's the
come
first
on.
time you said that to me ever. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm performing at Transistor in Chicago on June 15th. And so definitely come out and check that out. I'm on Bandcamp as mackenziejames.bandcamp.com. Yeah, and
You've got some songs up there, too.
They're very pop culture referencey, and I've yet to write that those Stephen King tunes, but I know he loves rock and roll. So Stephen, if you're listening, definitely check me out, man.
Awesome. All right, Mike, anything you want to plug?
This month is a very heavy month. We got Alien. We're gonna have a whole not an Alien week per se on Consequence of Sound, but we're gonna have some features. I'm gonna be doing a deep dive into Alien 3, and spoiler alert, I am a huge fan of Alien 3. So there's gonna be a really in-depth editorial on that, followed by my review of Alien Covenant, which I am planning to go really long on, and because I've been writing about this movie for 2.5 to 3 years now. I think I've written about like 50 articles on this already. It never ends. So I am ready to just purge. And then also Twin Peaks Week we're going to be having on Consequence of Sound, which is going to be very exciting. I'm in full David Lynch mode right now. I'm enjoying it. We're actually celebrating David Lynch over at the Music Box in Chicago. So
yeah, it's a great festival going on with all of his movies, all of his short films. It's been pretty wild.
It'll be over by the time you hear this, but if you're a time traveler, consider jumping backward to it.
Just to know that we have enjoyed it. When you hear it, we enjoyed it. There you go.
Yeah.
And
what about you, Justin?
Oh, thanks, Mike. Well, Mike and I and a couple other people are working on a big, pardon the pun, exhaustive Foo Fighters top. We're ranking all the Foo Fighters songs for all you Foo heads out there, and that's been an interesting process because they've got a lot of songs that we've never heard, first of all, and some lesser songs that were non-albums for reasons. I wrote a little piece for the upcoming season of Sense8 that will hopefully be out by the time this podcast airs.
Oh, it will be. Both of those features will be
cool.
out.
So that'll be out there to Google that stuff on COS, and we just kind of start working on a huge project. A few of us here actually are going to be embarking on a pretty big REM feature, multiple features for their 25th anniversary of Automatic for the People. That's 25 years ago.
So crazy.
Oh my God. And I remember it coming out too. Oh, I'm so old. Anyway, so that's exciting. And last but not least, I want to make it clear once again that I heard the last episode in which Allison confidently stated that I would be dead before Mike. And we're in touch with local bookies around here, around Chicago. I'm on to you, Allison. And I would like to say that's great, but I think Randall will be dead before I am. You hear me out there, Randall?
Ooh.
Randall, check your Ouija Origin of Evil for confirmation. You're gone before me, buddy.
I just think if somebody let's say we get to a point in time when you're experiencing heart failure and you can have your heart replaced with a robot heart. I think of everybody on this podcast, the person least likely to accept a robot heart is Justin Gerber.
You're right. I would be like, you know what? I'm done here.
I'm going to go ahead and die.
I'm
if that's
good
okay.
here. I don't want to end up as a Twilight Zone episode hosted by Forrest Whitaker. On the Forrest Whitaker note, once again, hey guys, great episode, huh?
Yeah,
terrific time. Please stick around because next week we'll be doing another news and following the Stephen King tweet. More importantly, we do have another interview coming up that a few of us here had with. Can we say it? With Mick Garris?
Yes,
I just said it.
We did it. You did. You just spoiled it.
There you go.
We can't edit that out at all. So we spoke to filmmaker Mick Garris. He was a very nice guy, and he gave us some little pointers and not pointers. I don't know what the hell that was doing.
Here's how
he
to
gave us
direct.
he actually gave us some pointers on the podcast. No, he gave us some great anecdotes, and we're very psyched. And we have a third interview that we're going to be working on after that.
We'll keep that a surprise,
and that's going to be a surprise.
That's great. And then obviously, 2 weeks from now, we will be covering the final book in The Stand, book 3. And then we will be done with the novel The Stand. But of course, 2 weeks after that, we'll be back to talk about the 1994 miniseries. And we're excited. We're wrapping up The Stand. For those of you keeping track, after we're done with all The Stand, we're going to be doing The Long Walk.
You might say this entire process with The Stand has been a long walk.
It's been a long. Hey, you know what? I'll say it. It's been a long walk.
Oh God, if it's been like the actual long walk, that's frightening.
Yeah.
That is frightening. Well,
No.
you should definitely read The Long Walk. It's a Richard Bachman book that is available, unlike Rage was not available. And then after that, The Dead Zone, and we'll be entering 80s King. So we're done with the 70s in Stephen King. This is pretty exciting. Yeah. So until then, please make sure to pass the word around about the podcast. Please keep posting. We love talking to everybody out there. And please leave a review on iTunes.
We love those. We actually share them on
Facebook.
our on emails. We love them. We love reading them. It's great.
Your rotating cast of female panelists love them in particular.
Yeah, and she takes special note of those rotating female panelists.
I shouldn't
comments.
it's one review. I shouldn't pick
It's
on
true,
that guy.
but again,
it just didn't catch a name. Whatever, it's fine. It just made me laugh so hard.
Allison
if
is
you're
absolutely
listening,
here.
I'm glad you're so delighted with all 8 versions of me.
You've got a great personality. You've got 8 specific types.
Ooh,
it's
I'm
exciting.
like Split.
All right. We'll
All
save
right.
Split for another time.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited for Glass in 2 years.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Well, see Split first and then get back to me.
Okay.
But on that note, what can I say except long days and pleasant nights?
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.